Yep, we're going over all the dungeons. I want to go over all the PTR stuff, basically just walk through every dungeon and talk about just some of the mechanics and some of the harder stuff as a healer after having healed a bunch of like 19s, 20s or whatever. So for once in our life, we did a crap ton of Mythic Plus on the PTR. Usually I don't like to spoil my food, but I didn't really play much last season and I had the itch. And although I don't want to make guides for everything, I'm going to go over some audio commentary on some of the dungeons and just give my thoughts on some of the harder stuff and how to heal them and all that. I'm going to give you the most important fact about all of the dungeons for this season that is a reoccurring thing. And honestly, it's a thing all the time in WoW, but there's a very important healing profile or damage type that you need to be ready for. And it is a unavoidable AoE damage and unavoidable single target damage. So for example, there will be like a tantrum or blow up or stomp that happens every 20 seconds. And then someone in that group will be in danger either from an extra bolter or a debuff or whatever. There are actually quite a lot of debuffs in the dungeons this season, but normally debuffs are such that if you don't dispel them, that person's just dead. There are a lot of debuffs and bolts, I think, but they are not nearly as lethal as they have been before. And it's a more of a, you know, random damage archer type event rather than a emergency dispel. There are still emergency dispels. All right, let's start the dungeon. So Ruby Life Pools return from Dragonflight. It's changed quite a bit, but in essence, it's basically the same thing. So these rock guys, the big guys, are the first AoE damage event. Now, a lot of tanks are going to do a big pull right here, and this pull can be quite hectic. If you have the shield trinket, it's really good to just rip this shield trinket first global. You see how I do this? Because this guy uses Excavating Blast and does a bunch of AoE damage. So you can see right here, literally 1 second into the first VOD, this is the exact thing I mentioned. Our Shadow Priest has a debuff. This is the single target debuff that comes from the Earth guys, the little guys, and then the big guy does the stomp. And so you see how I use scales both for myself and to defense the person who's in danger, and I do AoE healing. I messed up here and did an AoE heal. Look, don't analyze my play, okay? This is on PTR. Don't worry about my AoE healing. This is a really big pull, so these are all individual debuffs. This is a very, very scary pull, and when you go into a Ruby Life Pools, you have to be ready to heal right out of the gate. If you haven't sent nearly all of your cooldowns in the first minute of Ruby Life Pools, then you probably played incorrectly as a healer. This pull is incredibly dangerous. You can see we're taking literally infinite damage from the AoE blaster and the single target blaster. There was stops in this pack before. The only thing that you really care about stopping now is the shields, and there are bolts that hopefully your DPS players are kicking. So this continues. This is the same all the way through this part. Then you have this guy. This guy's actually very, very easy. This guy also, I mean, this is more of the same, right? This mini boss, you have to kill him. You can't skip this guy anymore or drag him into boss. This guy has a tantrum AoE. This AoE is much more mellow, right? You can watch it. It happens pretty quickly on pull. Many of these damage events happens like 20 seconds apart, by the way, these sort of tantrum style AoEs. The one thing that you have to watch out for this guy is the charge. So very often tanks will not want to pull these casters because their teammates are bad and they're not going to kick, so tanks don't want to kick them. However, this boss is going to charge you. So you have to position yourself in such a way that the boss doesn't charge towards mobs. It doesn't matter because it's just going to charge your teammates and it's going to pull them anyway, but be ready for that. If you see the mob is going to charge elsewhere, get ready for those mobs to pull. Also, as a small thing, this boss can charge through this wall and your DPS may hate you, so keep that in mind. Okay, onto the boss. This boss got nerfed pretty significantly as well. This boss used to be hell in Dragonflight, but is much, much more mellow now. To the point where I think all of the damage outside of the intermission, you don't need to use cooldowns, and you can basically just heal with your normal abilities and focus on damage. This right here, the tornado pull thing has gotten a lot easier. It's possible that they make this boss harder when the dungeon goes live, but for the most part, this stuff is really, really easy. So the highest keys that people were doing on PTR that I remember were 20s. And so this is a 19, and you can see like this doesn't do that much damage. I have hots out on everybody, but this is not that scary at all. All right, so the hard part of the fight is the intermission. The boss summons a bunch of whelps, gets a shield that you have to break, and pulses damage. When the whelps spawn, you want to run behind your tank. See how the whelps are running at me, and Dorky has built himself a little igloo here, and I had to kind of run inside of it so that he can pick up threat on all the whelps. Also, these whelps put a debuff. It's kind of hard to see because my frames are going crazy, but this debuff can't stack up to 20 or your tank will get stunned, and this is very bad. The debuff happens the more whelps are out. If there's only like a couple whelps, it's just no problem. You don't need to worry about it. If your tank is like going crazy pulling whelps, or one of your DPS does or something, you have to watch out for the dispel. This one is notoriously hard to remember. I don't know why I always forget about dispelling this, but always remember to dispel that. And yeah, this is the intermission. This is where you send all your cooldowns, your defensives, literally everything. You pretty much don't need to press anything in any other part of this fight. And the rest of the fight just repeats. There's 2 of those intermissions. They're spaced out roughly a minute to a minute and a half, depending on how much damage your team's doing and when their cooldowns are. All right. This area has gotten thinned down quite a bit and is also not so rough. Ideally, your tank should only have one of these Cinder Caster guys in a pull at a time. They also do less damage. This Fiery Blast is on the tank. It didn't seem like people usually kick this. It was just like a tank buster thing, especially with Blood DKs, they'll just heal it. Okay, so this is the same damage profile again we talked about. This Blaze guy puts out a fire debuff, or no, sorry, the small guy, these Flame Lashers put out this debuff. Then the big guy puts out a big AoE damage. This debuff hurts really, really bad. Whenever this happens, whenever you see somebody going in with a debuff and the AoE damage, be right. Like, I immediately time dial them external. I start ramping all my AoE heals. You see how, like, look at Twix's health bar tick. He is getting chosen by every single ability in this run. Like, look at the tick of this health bar here. He's literally losing like half of his health with each tick, and this is with a ton of hots and defensives on him. Someone in chat says you can line it. It might be a little clunky to do it, but maybe there are some spots that are easy or stuff that people will figure out. Nah, I made it up. Okay, you can't just make stuff up, okay? That's my job. AoE damage from the big Ellies, smaller guys with the debuffs. Very, very common damage type. We'll see it over and over and over again in all the dungeons. This is a harder pull. Around this time, your Lust comes up, so keep that in mind. Same shit. This is just 2 casters, 2 flame lashers, so it can be a little bit scarier. Oh yeah, this used to be a knock-up thing that you would use to hit the mobs. I don't believe it does anything anymore. I don't believe it hits mobs. I think you just want to keep it to yourself and not knock anything up. You can see this is huge danger. Like my health bar is going absolutely nuts here when I have this debuff. Like I'm pretty sure I just healed myself through like 4 full health bars of health. Okay, so there are 2 dragons. The dragons are just walking around now. In Dragonflight, they used to fly around. Now they just walk around. So their patrols are easier to understand. This dragon is the easier of the 2, mostly. He does very little until he gets to 50% health, and then he starts ramping damage. So you can pull him with other stuff, and it's not too scary. Just keep watching his health and be ready to start healing at 50%. You definitely want to save cooldowns for this moment, because if your team doesn't have damage, it will hurt really bad. So one thing that they changed in this dungeon is they added kind of like a lot of random mobs off to the side to give you more variety in routing, which I think is really good. However, these flame lashers are very scary, and these cinder guys require a kick. So stuff like this will happen very frequently, where tanks will want to pull things like this and you won't be ready, but this is the flame lasher that does that crazy debuff, right? So we have the crazy debuff on top of the flame goulet, right? So you can see that our Windwalker took a bunch of damage, and I kind of wasn't ready for that, right? Like in hindsight, knowing that that was going to happen, I had time dial ready, but you know, I'm not used to this, and so he drags that in and we just blow up instantly. So that's like a huge pain point in here. The rest of this stuff is basically more of the same. It's just the same 3 mobs. Do we pull the storm guy? No. Okay, so this is Thunderhead. Yep, Thunderhead, that's his name. This guy, you can skip pretty easily, and most people on PTR were skipping this guy by just running this way. You can actually run behind this tree, or just if you wait long enough, you can just run right with the tree. This guy has gotten nerfed a couple times because nobody was fighting this and he was really difficult. There is some world where this starts to become part of the route. If you like, you know, whenever you have Lust, you just pull this with this and Lust it. There is a world where people start pulling this, but the way that this guy works is he has 2 debuffs that he puts out. When you dispel one of them, it puts a massive dot on your whole party. So if you dispel both, it puts 2 stacks of a dot, and it's very scary. So the way that I was handling it was dispel one, then pop a healer CD, then dispel the other, then pop a healer CD, or, you know, yell at your team to use defensives or whatever. But it is very heavy, consistent damage, so you really want to have cooldowns rolling for this guy. Okay, this is the second boss. This boss has had visuals improved pretty significantly and is more intuitive. You can see when the ad is going to spawn on you. You almost always want to spawn the ad as close to the boss as possible. So you see that it goes on our melee player, and we just let him put it there because we want to cleave the mobs right away. If you have this, don't run out of your group. Run on top of the boss. So this guy, the Fire Ellie has 2 different AoE casts. One is kickable, one is not. Right away when he spawns, he's always going to do this Inferno and hit your party. It's not particularly scary, but the damage will add up and it can get hard to heal in high keys. The scary thing is if one of these blaze volleys gets off, so you kind of want to watch. And if you, at this point, you should know if your team is a bunch of zoo animals by now. And if they're zoo animals, then you should be ready for that to go off and pop a healer CD or something. They've also quickened the pace of this boss. Usually this guy will get about 2 Infernos off every time they live. I wasn't quite ready for this because I thought we were going to kill it in time because we had cooldowns rolling or something, and things end up being really scary for us. But this is just a skill error. Other than that, this is quite simple. As a healer, this fight isn't too hard. You want to do your best to try and help with DPSing the ad down and try and bait these boulders. Once you get targeted by the boulder, you can't move which way it's going. So see how we always rotate to the back side of the boss while we're healing to try and make space. Depending on if you skip any of the dragons, it may cause you to go a direction. Most people skipped the lightning dragon and then went the opposite direction because you can't go the other way because of the lightning guy. And yeah, this guy is quite simple and he takes kind of a long time. And I suck at healing, so we have to do it with a Windwalker down. Okay, next pulls. Now this is going to be the same damage profile again. So these Storm Warriors pulse AoE damage every time they use their Thunderclap, and the Tempest Channeler channels a beam that hurts really freaking bad. And it has a kick. It has some other abilities, but the most important thing you need to know as a healer is it's got a beam. All right, so you can see it right here, right? You can see the AoE damage pulsing from the warriors, and here's the lightning torrent that goes on our Windwalker, who I let die again. Oh no, I save him that time. So again, this is the same damage. Oh, no, now I let him die. Same damage profile over and over and over, right? So getting good at using your external, whether it's sack or time dial or whatever, is very important. And pressing defensives when you're targeted by these things and being aware if you're in one of these pulls is very, very, very important. This is maybe a little bit more than most groups will do. This is a lot of these warriors with AoE, but I think this is a good way to pull the dungeon at a higher key. The Flame Lasher, I think, has a debuff or a kick or something, but again, it's just the same damage profile over and over. This mini boss is like a bigger version of the channeler. She like summons ads and then like gets a shield and you have to break the shield. This is DPS stuff. We don't need to worry about this as healer. Okay, hopefully by this point you have 100% count. So this boss is also quite easier than it was before. All of the bosses in the season are no longer nuclear difficulty. The difficulty of the dungeon is a lot more flat. It's not easy, it's not a pushover, but nothing is nuclear. So the way this boss works is it will target 2 people with a puddle that you drop, and then it'll have winds that push you around the room. You sort of want to place the puddle so that you don't get the fire blown on your head. It starts going this way, so if you're looking at the entrance, it's going to your right. It always goes counterclockwise around the room. You can position your drop strategically because you know where the fire is going to drop, and this makes your life a hell of a lot easier as a healer because you can stay together. You can see we drop on this side, it all gets pushed to this way, and then we have the room. The next drops we will put up here by the entrance because then they're going to go this way. These debuffs are not too bad, but they definitely do hurt and require some healing, so don't be full monkey here and be conscious of when you're getting cut off from your team. The last thing about this boss is it has this interrupting shout ability. You will not have a weak aura for this very likely because like weak auras isn't a thing, and I don't know if you can even do that. However, you may want to either use an add-on to find some way to remind you of this cast or just get used to it. It plays a little sound even in the base UI, the little like, you know, shing or whatever when a boss is using an important cast, but do not be casting when this shout goes off. The big killer of this boss is you're accidentally casting when the shout goes off and then someone gets debuffs and you can't heal them. So always be ready for that. Lastly, there is a debuff that goes on the tank that you have to dispel, I think. I was just dispelling it. I don't know how lethal it is, but it was lethal last expansion. At 50%, no, is it 40%? I think it's 40. At 40%, the boss jumps on the dragon and they sort of like unite their mechanics or whatever. It's more or less all of the same mechanics, except for now it targets 3 people with the debuffs instead of 2. So this is usually where I start using my cooldowns here. Essentially, like it'll jump on the dragon and then you start sending stuff here. This is where the healing gets a little bit heavier. I think most of the debuffs rotate, but I don't know for sure. I didn't test it. I sort of assume almost almost everything in the game has some sort of pseudo RNG. Even if it doesn't directly rotate, it seems like it kind of does. Like some sort of like, how do you say? Like a deck system. And yeah, that's this boss. This dungeon is pretty reasonable. I describe it as like very middle of the pack in terms of difficulty. There are lots of challenges, but nothing really feels like super oppressive. Very easy. Oh, well, what happens here is we kind of get separated because of bad drops, right? I run toward the boss, but then I don't realize that Twix is out back. And then I start spam healing Twix, trying to save him. And then Billy just dies because he doesn't have a defensive. I mean, first of all, I didn't say it was very easy. Anyway, all right, let's move on. Next dungeon. We're trying not to linger too hard. We're rapid firing. Also, I didn't vet these keys heavily, so there may be some mistakes in here. Okay, so this is Temple. The healer idea of unavoidable AoE damage plus single target damage is on crack in this dungeon, especially for the first half. The Sand Fury guy does unavoidable AoE that is also a knockback and can be very annoying if you're trying to heal it. And there are a lot of random single target things in this pull. There are these archer barrages that you can see, it's this icon right here where it'll just shoot somebody over and over again. You want to stop these, you can use a stun or push or whatever to stop them as a healer. Usually your team is going to be in cooldowns when you start a pull, so try and use your stops on these barrages at the beginning of a pull. I believe this has changed so it doesn't fire off right away, so you can actually gather that guy now, but this may happen in a key. Also, these Crowlusks, these little guys with the fangs or whatever, these guys put a bleed. This bleed is quite nasty, and having a bleed dispel is quite helpful, but obviously not every healer can do that. On top of that, the adepts have bolts. So we have the archers, we have the bleeds, and we have the adept bolts that we have to worry about. Luckily, there's not too many of the adepts. Your team is probably expected to kick all of them, but you know, it's pugs, so you never know. So this is the ground pound, the AoE knockback, and this is where you want to send your major CDs. Again, every healer is probably going to be playing this trinket, and so sending your trinket on the first big AoE of this pull is probably a good move to stop people from dying. And this is an overly dangerous pull, but also we have bloodlust, so that's why we do it. Okay, so we go a bit crazy in this VOD. Maybe this is not the best VOD to select, but we actually pull the Stone Fury and a caster and another guy into the boss. We know what all these guys do, so just deal. Normally this boss isn't that hectic, but you know, your team may decide to pull trash. This boss is pretty mellow. It's a very, very heavy movement fight. So what it'll do is it'll constantly push you around and make you run into melee to soak and out to whatever. One thing to note here is that your tank may skip stuff in this room. This Gale Force, this is the most crazy knockback ever put into a dungeon. Watch how hard this goes. Like that was with a hover, it pushes you very, very far back. After the knockback, almost always there's a soak and you have to run in to soak it. So make sure that you don't linger. You can see how I hover right back into the boss. You don't necessarily need to use a movement ability, but don't just stand out there in the middle of nowhere. Another thing to note about the knockback is your tank may skip stuff and you don't want to pull it. So you're essentially during the knockback, you're always trying to look at where you're getting knocked back. There will be puddles that you drop on this boss as well that silence you for 6 seconds. It's either 6 or 7 seconds. And so when you get silenced, it's very, very, very bad. You kind of want to put your puddles together, remember where they are, and be careful not to get pushed back into them. This probably won't happen in pugs, but this is just a way to think about it if you're, you know, trying to think about stuff on a high level. So the way that we're playing and tanking this is we're tanking it by the wall, we're putting our puddles where we were, and then we're going this way so we don't get knocked back. I might position myself stupidly because I'm worried about cleaving someone else or whatever, but you can see that our DPS players are against the wall there, so they don't get pushed back, and then it's easier for them, and then me and the mage can just jump right back in. Yeah, and again, normally there's not much damage. The only real damage of note in this fight is Gust, this little debuff. This guy will move a debuff around your party, so see how there's one here, now there's one here, and it's very, very light damage, but if you mess up or you get silenced or you're just asleep at the wheel, then people die, so just be conscious of that. This was an overlap caused by having a Stone Fury. You very likely will not have a Stone Fury on this boss if you're playing normally, but if you do, then you want to be using your major healing CDs when that is going off. Other than that, there's not really too much to say. This boss is pretty mellow. In general, the dungeons that they brought back have had very scary bosses, but they've mellowed most of them out. Okay, so here's the silence right here. We can see it. It's almost like I made up the number just to make a meme. Okay, So this rider, he spawns little guys and the little guys have the bleed. All of this trash going forward is no AoE damage, just lots of little single target damages. So now there's an addition of a poison and there's a bleed and there's the casters and there's the archers, right? All this stuff is going on, but there's no AoE damage. So you're constantly trying to stop and remove as many of the individual things. This is sort of like a tunnel at your party frames and keep trying to keep all the debuffs and stuff off. But I can't really give you much advice for that. You just have to prioritize who's getting hit and your squishy members, and kind of just have to randomly send defensives and externals here whenever you get debuffs. And the next room is more of the same. This can get pretty scary depending on how well your team knows what's going on, because again, there's all of these mobs have little mechanics that you need to deal with or whatever. So if you have a very passionate tank that wants to pull a lot of stuff and a very lazy DPS team, or I guess a healer asleep at the wheel, you will die here. I get bolted, which sucks. The run back here is very... Okay, so there's some nonsense going on in this key. Also, there was a bug with Evoker where your Disintegrate would get stuck. And so this beam that's coming out of my head was just a bug on the test realm. Just ignore. Pretend like this line going to my character doesn't exist. It's still on live now. Okay, great. Never mind. It's not a bug on the test realm. It is a bug that is still in the game as of current recording, but hopefully it gets fixed. Okay, so your lust will come up around here. So chances are your tank may do a big lust pull in here with a ton of stuff to worry about. Just always be watching the stuff. Try to keep up on your poison dispels and try and stop the archers. There's also a caster in here that casts Addle Mind that you need to kick. Before you could stop it, but I don't think it goes on cooldown if you stop it anymore. It's sort of like a required kick. Next is Marektha. This boss is very, very easy. This is one of the easiest bosses in next season. It casts Knot of Snakes. If you get targeted by this, you need to be in the boss's hitbox so that your team can stun. If you have any ability that are like an AoE stun or disorient or whatever, it's good to have those. I don't think Evoker can really do much because your tail swipe and your push or whatever don't work. So the only real damage of this fight is this moment right here. After he spawns snakes, he puts debuffs on people and then does AoE damage. So Thunder Spit puts 2 debuffs, but even these are like pretty chill. You can see these debuffs aren't hurting that bad. You should be, okay, they're doing a little bit of damage, but you should be defensiving these because there's almost nothing else to defensive in the fight. The priest did, but I didn't because I suck. And then after that, there's a group-wide AoE damage, but again, this is pretty mellow. This isn't very heavy damage. You can send cooldowns here if you want. Ideally, you just like make sure you defensive or whatever when people are getting the debuffs. And I believe it only happens once per phase. It only happens once every like minute or minute and a half, so you can just send a huge cooldown there if you want to. The intermission, do not get hit by the snake charging through the wall. This is a very funny mechanic that is quite easy to see, but because he's sneaky and he slides off of your screen and then charges through you over and over, you want to constantly be changing your camera to make sure you can see it. Pulse is AoE, but again, the AoE is pretty chill. You just kill the snakes to get the guy back down. Notably, this is not a HP based fight, I believe. It's just timed, so the more damage you have, the less phases you'll have, which is quite good if you're a high damage group. Okay, on to the next area. Now we're back. We've escaped from... Now, for some reason, I have 2 beams going from my head. I don't know if it's like coming from each boss or what, but yeah. These Nimbus do unavoidable AoE damage. They cast a power-up that you can purge or remove or spell steal that makes them do more damage. I don't believe you actually get the buff anymore. I think it just removes it, and then he blows up. So notably, if a guy is powering up and then he blows up without getting removed, he's going to do more damage. Yeah, you can see this area is quite AoE heavy healing. There are casters that have bolt still. The smaller storm guys jump on top of people. It seems like they jump to either the furthest person or at range. So be conscious about your positioning here. If you're a healer that's ranged, you may want to just stand out and press a defensive and know that they're going to jump on you. However, you are hurting your team's damage if you're standing out too far. So what I try and do is stand out like medium far so that it's not cleaving everybody, but at the same time, they can get in pretty quickly. It's kind of like my positioning strategy here. This is quite an aggressive pull. We were pulling quite aggressive in this dungeon, but I think it's fine. You want to find a way to pull less stuff. This is the same mobs, basically. The jumpers, the small guys, the big guys that blow up, and the debuffs. I got hit with a bolt there, unfortunate. Oh yeah, last thing to note is these guys, these casters have a debuff. Let's see if we can see it come out. Okay, it goes on Twix. It is a dot that is honestly not that bad. Like you can see it's not ticking that hard. However, if it expires without you dispelling dispelling it, I'm pretty sure the person eats like a fat stun, and it's very, very bad if you don't dispel. So make sure you are dispelling that debuff, even though it may appear to not be that important. Okay, you may be thinking of a theme so far, but this boss has been mellowed out quite a bit. This was known as the hardest boss to heal in BFA. I will stop and pause 1 second. So the way the boss works is it goes on a very short fixed cycle. It spawns 3 pillars that connect to the boss, and anybody soaking the pillar takes damage. The pillar soak makes you take an insane amount of physical damage. So very likely the tank will not want to be soaking this unless they are very, very strong or whatever. Usually it's 3 DPS or 2 DPS and a healer. As a prez, I kind of liked just having everyone else soak so that I can just position myself for that and then heal them, but you can heal some stuff as needed. There's only 2 damage events in the fight. Essentially, you want to try and send at least something to every single one of these lightnings. Like every time one of the lightning comes out, plan to have like 1 button or burst AoE heal or something. It's not tremendous damage, but it is quite a bit of damage. And so after that happens, it will blow up. So this is just a check to make sure that you've topped everybody from the beams. It blows up, but you have a lot of downtime here, so this may be panic mode for some people, but don't worry about it. You see how much time I have to top everybody before the next pillars come out, and that's it. That's the whole fight. Lastly, notably, he drops this puddle. The puddle hurts pretty bad, and it happens right after the blow up. So if you're a melee healer, like a paladin or a mistweaver, you need to be careful here because it'll blow up and it'll put a puddle, and if you're here standing, like see how the Windwalker almost got ticked by it? Or I think he stood in it for karma maybe, because it didn't look like he took that much damage, but if you're a melee healer and you're tunneling on your frames and you stand in the boss's hitbox during that blow up, you're going to take a lot of damage. I think the most common death on this boss will be that, standing in the puddle on accident after the blow up. And yeah, that's the whole fight. It's literally just this over and over and over again. Basically what I'll do is check the situation, see who has defensives. If there's defensives used, then I don't use a cooldown. If there is defensives, I do use a cooldown. I try and position myself in such a way that I can heal everybody. I don't know if you can do some weird shenanigans like you could in previous beam mechanics where you like weave in and out to take less damage. I don't think you could, but I don't remember trying it, so maybe that will be a thing. The other thing about this boss is sometimes you can get weird spawns. Be careful of not getting targeted by 2 at once. Let's say you're trying to soak this one, but someone isn't. Well, I guess in that case, you would rather soak both. Yeah. Just be careful. If you're ever taking 2 pillars, you're going to take huge damage and blow up. You do not want to take 2 pillars. This is the maze. The maze does not end until you kill this guy now, so you have to kill it. You can't just have one person rush through to the end or stop him or whatever. Okay, so they've completely changed how this room works. There are 2 orbs. You have to walk up to the orb and click on it to start powering it up. When you start powering it up, it spawns an orb watcher, and the orb watcher will do unavoidable AoE damage. Big surprise. And also, whoever is closest to the pillar will have their health drained. So you need to be watching for who's getting drained in the pillar, especially during the stomp. I feel like probably the way that it should be done is the tank just stands in it because the tank doesn't seem in danger for this event, but who knows? You can see this is the AoE right here. This is Caustic Stomp. I put out my trinket beforehand to absorb a lot of the initial damage, but it hits pretty dang hard. They buffed this near the end of the PTR cycle, and yeah, this is hitting really, really hard. I don't know what I messed up here or what was going on, but I sent my trinket and still had a death, which is scary. Also, it spawns these temple disruptors that try and stop the orb. They like channel an ability on it. For the most part, DPS will take care of these because there's nothing else to kick in this room, but as a healer, if your team is monkey, you may need to stop those. Other than that, nothing else really in this room does anything. You just stop the guys with the orb and then you deal with the AoE damage. This is all the same. All of this trash on this hallway has gotten taken out, and then this boss and room has been redesigned completely. So these are tormentors. They will always fixate the healer if there is a healer available to fixate. When they hit you, they hurt, and they put a debuff on you that reduces your healing. So you really don't want to get hit by these guys. It is up to yourself as well as the DPS to protect you from these guys. And they also appear on the boss. And then there is a hexer that uses a like hex puddle ability. So this ability has been changed since this video was taken. This ability will now always go on you as a healer. It will only go on you as opposed to anyone else. What it does is at expiration, it drops a puddle, does damage, and sheeps you. And so you basically always want to press your defensives on that and nothing else because there's not too much other damage. So you're avoiding thing these guys and you're defensiving this. This was a little weird because you would get sheeped as a healer and other people would get sheeped, and it was really messy and they they changed the way this works. You have to talk to this boss. Usually the healer does it to kind of signify like, hey, I have mana. So as a healer, I know you don't like to have jobs, but that's one. And the boss is pretty much that again. It spawns a guy that hits your tank that you don't want to get hit by. This guy puts out a debuff. Also, when mobs spawn on this boss, they can randomly melee somebody if they're on top of them. So for example, you see here Twix, even though Dorky got threat right away, this guy just clobbered him and he took a really bad dot. In order to progress the fight, you need to kill this defiler, and it also spawns a hexer. Again, these hex puddles aren't a thing anymore. Well, it is, but it always goes on only you, and so you need to prepare for that. These orbs have been changed a couple times, but I believe the current way they work is the DPS has to soak them. When you walk into these orbs, it puts a debuff on you that reduces your healing done significantly and maybe increase damage as well. The intention is that tanks and healers are not supposed to soak these. If you soak them as a healer or a tank, it hurts you very badly. Right now, they do some weird thing where they blow up and they take a long time. I believe the way it works now is you need to soak them very quickly, and there's nothing you can do about it as a healer. So be ready for that. Funny enough, this was a healer fight and is, like, seems like a healer fight, but is actually not really anymore. There's not really much healing or responsibilities you have as a healer on this fight. Okay, so once you kill the trash mobs, you get an intermission phase. During the intermission phase, you can heal the middle boss. There's really nothing else to do other than run away from the fixates, so I just heal them. I don't know how much the healing actually matters. Don't like yourself out or risk your team to spam heal, but you know, why not? Because there's nothing else going on. These ads, as you kill them, heal the boss. And so you want to kill as many ads as you can as fast as possible. So again, the DPS, I think, do a majority of the share healing this boss. I could be mistaken, and you probably want to just heal anyway, but like using fire breath here and trying to help kill the ads if you have an easy global is actually a good thing to do. And then you can see that guy spawned on my head because the intermission ended, and I took a lot of damage. If you go fast, you can do this boss in 2 phases, or 2 healing phases, I should say, but generally it would take 3 on a hierarchy. Yeah, you want to keep killing the mobs because the intermission is on a fixed time. We were even seeing people like bloodlust the intermission to try and kill more sets of ads or whatever, but again, this is the DPS problem. This was essentially the problem of the fight on the test realm, where someone would get hexed and you would get hexed, so you couldn't heal them, and you're like separated because you're dropping a puddle, and it was really messy. But it does not work like that anymore. And we deplete. Actually, we don't even finish the key, holy moly. Or no, maybe we do? We did it. All right, next dungeon. We're doing a nice little world tour here. This is the Voidscar Arena. I think I might be messing around with some stupid talents in this build. In general, a lot of my time on PTR is testing stuff and with weird UI, so don't put too much credence into my talent choices or the way that I'm playing. We are focused on the dungeons here. Okay, I'll be honest, I don't really know what the hell goes on in this pull. There's like a bunch of random stuff and damage and a bunch of kicks and stops that you have to do. These brawlers have a cast. It's a demo shout cast. You need to kick it or it puts a big damage down on your party. Because there's so many kicks in this room, given that there's 2 of these shaman, we decide to CC that brawler and bring it into the next pull. And usually going all the way to this mini boss can be quite scary in a not organized group. So not only do the shamans have kicks, but they spawn these totems that hit people. I think most groups will probably line of sight to get these guys in, but it can be annoying. I believe there's just a lot of single target damage on this pull. I can't think of anything that's flat out AoE unless casts get off. There's a shadow bolt volley and there's the demo shout or whatever that are group wide effects that need to be kicked. But for the most part, this is actually a lot of pressure on your DPS. The beginning of this dungeon is quite chill, so you still want to send cooldowns here during your lust just in case. Honestly, just like blind pressing defensives as the pull is getting gathered and sending a Zephyr or whatever defensives that you have as a healer is a good idea, just because why not? So there are 2 mini bosses, 1 on each side. They each give you a different buff for the rest of the dungeon. For the most part, we were fighting this one because the other side was a lot more annoying to do. This boss it basically does a little bit of AoE over time, and then it has a big AoE cast. So it's casting Fork Lightning, and you can kind of see the random damage going out. It spawns orbs that you need to kill, but for the most part, your DPS is responsible. This is the big AoE cast. This is the one that you really have to be ready for. This is very, very heavy. When you have defensives, this is what you need to be pressing, and this is when you need to be setting your healing CDs as well. This lasts 6 or 7 seconds. And it is like a shit ton of damage. You have to be ready to heal that. Don't get caught off guard because the beginning of the dungeon can be quite chill if your DPS are stopping shit and things are going well. But this will be your first big healing check. Okay, so now we go into this room. This room is a little bit weird. There's a bunch of bleeds, and the bleeds are quite nasty. The mobs jump to you, so similar to the lightning mobs in Temple, you want to be standing somewhat close to the pack, or honestly, maybe even on top of the pack in order to make sure that those don't get away. There's not really anything scary in this other than the bleeds, so just keep track of who has them. Sometimes people can get 2 bleeds. They kind of try to rotate around your party, but it's definitely possible, depending on how many you pull or how unlucky you get, that people get multiple bleeds, and in that case, be ready to give them very, very heavy healing. But you can see the cadence for the most part. There's just 2 guys jumping out or whatever, but yeah, these things hurt. This guy, the thing that you need to worry about is he has a really big AoE cast, Insidious Aura. It doesn't even have a wind up. It just starts and just starts instantly blowing up. So when you pull this guy, be ready. You can see this is like 10 seconds into pulling him or 12 seconds into pulling him. He uses that. So be ready for this. As soon as you pull this guy and see this Insidious Aura, you want to start ripping heals. There's more of the bleed guys as well. I don't know what I'm doing there. Okay, so this guy does AoE damage when he walks around, I believe, and you want to charge him into a wall in order to keep him here in the same spot. So the way that Dorky does this is he's fighting this guy, and again, you might have tanks that have no idea what they're doing. I'm more so just showing you so that you can understand. They're tanking this mini boss here on the gate that this guy comes out. Then when he comes out, Dorky's gonna face his charge into the wall so that they don't move. And you see, I was mega caught off guard by this AoE here. This was a huge, I don't know what the I was doing. Maybe it was because my DPS were positioning, because I was trying to hit my Dream Breath and Twix is here and Billy's on the opposite side of the pack and stuff. But either way, this is me not being prepared for this AoE, and you can see how nasty it is. I think I managed to, nope, yep, Twix dies. For some reason, every time I just let Twix die. Okay, I let Billy die too. There's some equality here. And now I position myself better so I can heal everybody. But yeah, Insidious Aura, very scary. And you can see that not being ready for one of these AoE events, your team is going to get smoked. And yeah, this guy will do damage if your tank is running him around, so you do not want him to be running around. If you fight this and your party is just blowing up uncontrollably, it's because your tank is moving this guy around. There's a turtle. This was a pack we forgot to kill. Just more bleed guys. Okay, this boss. This boss is very satisfying if you do it well, but quite challenging. And it will challenge your healing and your movement and your tanking. And this is a very, very demanding boss. So the boss will start with damage right away. This is the main damage event of the fight, is the lines. As soon as the lines are coming out, you should be planning for how you're going to heal it. And if you have defensives or major cooldowns, as soon as you see lines, you shouldn't worry about your positioning so much, but you should worry about the party's health. And positionally, people will be running around everywhere with these lines because they're trying not to hit each other. And so it may be hard to hit like ground effects like Healing Rain or Dream Breath. So this is what's going to happen. The lines are going to go out. It's going to hit every player one by one. It does initial damage. You can see I used my raid trinket there to stop a lot of the initial damage, but it also puts a pretty nasty dot that lasts quite a long time. It's like a 12-second dot on top of that initial hit. So this whole time you need to be healing. Like you see our Ellie Shaman decides that this is a good place to stand, and it makes healing quite hard. And so now after the dot, about 10 seconds, there's a check to make sure you topped everybody. So this is Dark Bloom, and this just is a one-time event. Again, don't panic that people are low health. All it is just a check to make sure people are topped. So when you're in this stage, even though it might look like, hey, my party member's health is fine because the dot's gonna run out, there is a check here, so you do need to keep pumping health in. And actually, there's a bigger emergency right now. And then once this hits, okay, now you're chilling. Do not get baited here into panicking and pushing everybody's health bars up, because you have to dodge these orbs. This is like a double bait boss, right? This boss is baiting you to think you're okay from these dots, and then it's going to blow up your party right after the dots expire. And then it baits you to heal the blow up when there's a huge dodge moment. These balls will kill you very likely on any real key, so you really don't want to get hit by those. And the room clutters up very quickly. We don't seem to have any sort of effective strategy for where we're placing our drops. However, putting them on like the side of the room or whatever is better for space management. You will see that the room will get quite hectic here. Again, here's our major damage event. You can see alter time, scales. This is where you want to use your defensives. And then the dot keeps ticking, and then there's going to be the blow up here. This is the Dark Bloom. So that's, again, this is a very short fixed cycle boss where it's going to big dot and lines and then blow up and then dodge and rinse repeat over and over and over again. However, because the puddles stay for quite a long time, the room will get filled up and dodging will get much more challenging. You can see here, I just have Oh no, I'm lagging, okay? I was gonna say, I'm not setting rewind or any major cooldown, but that's because my PTR realms or whatever shit's just frozen. Okay, next area. This area is actually quite easy as long as you don't pull this pack right here. We decide to usually go this way, but going the other way is just fine. This guy is a AoE group soak, and then I believe he has a single target thing as well, but they do not overlap. And these other mobs, pretty sure these guys just smack people, and then there's a caster, the shaman guy. All this is pretty mellow. There's not a lot of group damage going out. You just need to heal. Basically, it's just for the soak, right? You just need to make sure that everybody's top for the soak, but it's not that hard hitting. Like, these guys are not really that scary. Just don't fall asleep when this guy is doing his, okay, void beam, that's what it's called. But this is the same mob, so it never overlaps with the soak. Also, you can invis this. If you have invis or shadow meld or whatever, you can just completely negate that mechanic, and that's usually what you want a defensive. This pack has the brawler with the demo shout, the shaman, and this guy that like spins and is really annoying. On the test realm, we were skipping this mob virtually every time. You can just walk around this way, jump over the rail, and then not do them. It seems a little inefficient because then you have to fight this guy all alone, and we just saw how easy he was because we fought him with 4 other mobs. However, you need to kill him, and there's nothing really you can pull with him, so it just kind of like, I don't know, whatever. This is mainly save cooldowns for boss moment. Okay, this boss. This boss is actually quite demanding and can be very easy or hell if your DPS are sucking. You can see the theme. There was critique in these dungeons that, oh, they didn't do what they said about putting more emphasis on DPS. They absolutely have a lot of mechanics that demand you to do more as a DPS or pay attention. They're not tons, it's not overwhelming, but they definitely exist. So this guy starts quite easy. He just has like frontals or whatever. These puddles are quite strange. If you walk anywhere near them, they apply a poison to you that you can dispel. The poison is a damage down and a healing down, I believe. So you don't want that poison to sit, even though it seems like it's not doing much damage. He has an AoE damage event and it's really easy, right? And you're like, oh, this guy's easy. And then he does monstrous roar, I think it's called, and he spawns an ad. So you'll notice here again, dorky good tank, he's right next to where the ad will spawn because you need to kill this ad ASAP. As soon as this guy comes out, your party just starts getting trucked. This is send every CD. This is all your defensives, all your CDs whenever you see this ad up, right? And this guy needs to die ASAP. And then the boss will start doing it. Yeah, so like, even though we have good DPS players, because people didn't swap to him right away, like we took a death there. And I'm pretty sure I sent like a fair amount of cooldowns. I guess I could have sent my trinket too, but we pressed rewind and expected that to be enough. Yeah, so this ad, mega danger. Send all your healing CDs and be ready. And at this point, if you realize that your team is zoo animals, prepare to unleash your full power because you're going to have to if they're not going to target this ad. And as a healer, honestly, as much as you want to try and help kill it, like if you have any really good globals, you can, but you basically need to send everything into healing. Rewind would have been fine if it was pressed before he died. Yeah, it probably would help if you use a healing ability on someone before they die. Anyway, that's the whole fight, basically. He just does nothing, pretty much. He puts puddles around the room, and then he spawns an ad, and it's absolute mega chaos. This area has gotten changed a little bit since the first iteration of the season. These devouring brutalizers have an AoE spell, and the little jumper guys have bleed. Again, same damage pattern, just got to get used to it. It does some other thing where it like devours a mob and you have to kill the mob it's devouring or something. Look, I'm a healer, I don't know about any of that. You can see the damage is pretty high. Depending on how your tank pulls this trash, I'm sure pugs won't be too demonic with this, but you can see how much group damage goes out on some of these pulls. It just ebbs and flows depending on what mobs you're pulling in and what the tank has. I don't remember a whole lot about what these mobs do other than the random bleeds, but this stuff does get pretty scary. There are no like mini boss things or whatever. It's only these guys that walk around. You have to kill all of them to advance. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty much just more of that. Just me dying and yeah. It's that over and over again. Oh, I'm pretty sure we pulled this on accident. There's like a guy that's like sleeping over here. I don't even remember what happens. I don't think this guy does anything of note. Most of the trash in this area is like whatever. It just depends on how much you want to pull. What is going on here? There's a lot of stuff in this area. I'm not going to go into depth on what everything does. Like, this is a mob that I don't think we fought it at all in the dungeon, and there's just like one of them sitting here. But I'm pretty sure most of the mechanics are pretty intuitive, and I don't think anything here is worth noting. Okay, last boss. This boss can be quite scary as well. So he's going to spawn 3 gravity wells that pull you. As a healer, you want to be like kind of in the middle, but also not on top of the boss to give space for melee. Once you see these circles, this is where the damage starts and this is where things get scary. It's, I would describe as medium group healing, but then right after that, there's a mechanic, gravitic orbs, does a lot of damage. So this attaches an orb to your 3 DPS players and they have to drag the orb through the puddle. If they are a class like a mage or whatever that can just blink to the other side, they can usually handle it pretty quick. But if people are being monkeys and not doing it right away or weren't pre-positioned, they can take a lot of damage from this. You can see how heavy the damage is from this. And it's, I believe it's group damage. It's not just the person with the orb. It's like pulsing to everybody. So that is actually the most scary moment of the fight, is when the orbs go out. So while it's true that you want to have healing rolling during this suck or whatever, this is not like the send major healing CDs be scared moment. This is like the start ramping your healing and get ready because the damage is about to hit. If you have DPS that are good at bringing the orbs in right away, it might not be so bad, but like you can see this one, actually, this was really good. What did our Windwalker do? Did he walk inside of it with his orb? I actually didn't even, Oh, I guess it was just good RNG. So as a DPS, what you can do is you can stand near them and just hope you get lucky and it goes in there, because that's kind of a move. And yeah, rinse, repeat, same thing. Healing CDs as you see this, ramp up for the balls, and then get rid of them. Oh, you almost timed a key. All right, this is Den of Nalorakk. First, right off the bat, there's a little bit of a healer job. This bird comes down and tries to steal the berry from the bush. In order to progress in the dungeon, you need to collect 6 berries from this area. And this is a very, very easy one that requires no mobs to pull as long as you CC this bird. Also, you can just pull the bird and stun it and then drag it away. So as a healer, you want to make sure that you're not getting in combat with this bird, and then you can click these berries to start the dungeon while the first pull is gathering, and it progresses the dungeon quite easy. This trash is like pretty demonic, so you have to be careful. Okay, so these guys are the scary guys of note that you have to pay real attention to in this first part of the dungeon, the Spirit of Hunger. It will spawn a totem that reduces your group's max HP over time, and it will use this feast that will do AoE damage. So pretty much right away when you pull it, you'll see it'll use this totem. This is your sign to start blasting some AoE heals. Every time this totem goes off, I believe it does a little damage, and it also reduces your max HP by like 5%, or no, maybe it's more, maybe it's 10 or 15%. This usually shouldn't stack up. Like it has a very low amount of health and people will kill it quickly. However, just be ready, and if someone's in danger or whatever, just know that decursing them can be a thing. I get bolted, which sucks. Yeah, so the big guy doing the AoE, like that's the scary part essentially, is this moment with the totem coming out and the feast overlapping with damage. Again, same damage pattern as we've gone over and over again, right? So what is it? We're looking for the bolters. We're looking for these bleeds that jump out. And then I think that's it. I think those are the only 2. Now, these bolters are different because all of the bolters have a heal called Healing Breeze that needs to be kicked. So very likely when you pull these guys, bolts will go off. This is not a blame your team because a bolt went off pull. This is a expect bolts to go off and press defensives. As soon as I see this Earth Bolt on me, this should be press major defensive. Like I'm worried about the totem and being bad, but I should probably just slam bubble off the gate. Again, this is another pull where if you notice in other dungeons, I just press my trinket first global. It would have been great for me if I just pressed my trinket first global as we were setting up this pull, because the damage starts so soon. Learn that lesson, and just every single dungeon as you set up the lust pull, just press your trinket and things will feel better, I promise. Okay, so we deal with this stuff. Again, the goal is to collect 6 of these berries, however your tank wants to pull them. Again, there's 3 casters, right? Is this pull too demonic? Maybe, but you need to kick the Healing Breeze on all of these guys. So all of these bolts are going to be going off. So I've recently learned that the Dungeon Cast Bar Weak Aura add-on that Abby Cherry maintained is actually just an add-on now, and it works. I don't know how I didn't notice it. Like going back on people's VODs, I see it now, but for some reason, I guess my brain like zoned it out. I would highly recommend that if you're doing higher keys. Anyway, so be ready for these bolts to go out, right? Watch these. This is no AoE damage because there's no Spirit of Hunger, but this is a lot of single target damage from the bleeds and from the bolts that are going to go off. So you always want to be keeping track of the casts that go off, where they're going. Like, okay, there's one on a shine that's going to go. So if he has a bleed, he's scared. Okay, nothing's going on Terrathal. They're seemingly spread out. So that's pretty much this whole area. There is the single target guys, the bolts, the bleeds, and the Spirit of Hungers. And so again, every time you're pulling a Spirit of Hunger, you got to be scared because it's going to be AoE damage and health reduction. All right, okay, all the same, all the same. There's these bears. I'm pretty sure the bears have it in rage and they just hit the tank. Bears are, for the most part, chill. Another thing to note is that some of the berries can be obtained with fishing. I don't even know if you need to know fishing. I think you can just click on it. If this is your first time experiencing fishing, congratulations. It'll probably be a healer job, so be careful though, because like, make sure your team either knows that you're doing the fishing or that they're like at the end of a pull or whatever. If you try to like fish and your team pulls one of these Spirit of Hungers, they're just dead. Do not start fishing when your team is running into a pull with one of these spirits because they're just going to get owned. All right, this is a boss that is reminiscent of many bosses in the past, but is still quite cool. It has a series of abilities, and then it runs towards one of its totem pillars, and it empowers one of the abilities. I don't know. I'll just be totally honest. I don't know what the meta strategy will be or what pugs will do or whatever, but just know that, right? Like, know the abilities will get empowered, and depending on what pug you're playing with, they may do weird shit. Ravenous Bellow is the AoE. This is quite chill. It does some damage, but it doesn't really overlap with too much. You can see I used my trinket late. I probably should have pressed it early. When it gets empowered, I believe it also knocks you back. So you can see it didn't knock me back there, but it may do that in the future. The boss does a frontal cone, quite simple. These spikes hurt you if you walk in them. I didn't actually walk in any of them, so I don't remember exactly what it does. So the boss will throw out mushrooms. If this is empowered, I believe it'll throw out more mushrooms. These need to be soaked or they will blow up and debuff everybody in the party, and it will be really bad because the blow up will happen later when the boss is doing a mechanic. You need to soak all of the mushrooms all the time. People seem generally eager to soak them. I wasn't like totally stressing out as a healer. Every time you soak one, you get a stack of the poison. One stack of the poison doesn't really do too much, but more than one stack, you start to take very heavy damage. So make sure that if you're having to soak a bunch, you're also pressing a defensive or getting ready to blast heals. And that's that. Rinse, repeat. He will do a frontal. I believe this is the empowered frontal because it's like leaving spikes or whatever and it's cutting off the room. The AoE will knock back. He will throw mushrooms. This can be a little bit annoying when there's mushrooms in the spikes, but yeah, this guy is not hard. Don't be too scared of this guy. This area, this first part at least, is quite chill. Again, this is just more of the same. The bolters and the bleed guys. Again, remember the bolts will go off. Your team will not be kicking every bolter. You may pull 2 or more bolters and all of them will go off. That is the intention of this pack. All right, so this is the area that will vary heavily depending on how good your tanker group, how good they are. So now we have these mobs, these Terra Rumblers. These mobs, I believe the way they work is they put up a shield that needs to be broken by your DPS. It cannot be removed. That shield also pulses damage. So ideally try and focus those at least when the shield's up. It does it quite frequently. You can see there's another shield here. The big scare is when you're like being pushed around by the winds here that are coming up and there's shields or multiple shields. So keep that in mind. Okay, the maulers just have a kick. You need to make sure that you don't pull too many maulers. As a healer, you can't really do anything about it because the roar just recasts. These frost guys, these glacial revenants, put this debuff out. This is a huge pain in the ass because you're kind of like trapped here because you're hiding from the winds. So try and dispel these as fast as you can. I don't believe you can freedom or do anything weird with it. I believe you just have to dispel. And if you pull more of them, this is scary. It looks like we're pulling quite chill here. These guys, so this avatar guy is very, very annoying and has a huge area denial. You do not want to pull this guy. This is the slowly walking around guy that is extremely annoying if you pull him. So now you can see there are just a bunch of wolves hitting the tank. This pull has 2 glacial revenants, so you're not going to be able to dispel every debuff that goes out. You just want to do your best. This pull is 2 more glacial revenants and also a Terra Rumbler. Okay, what happens here? Maybe this is just threat. So we are trying to hide from the winds and all of these things. You may see tanks do a variety of strategies. I've seen some very demonic shit in here, but it is what it is. Okay, so I haven't seen a great way to do this part. The way that people have been doing it is just fighting these 3 and then fighting this guy alone. It is quite slow. However, this combination of mobs, so we have Glacial Revenant putting out the debuff, Terra Rumbler doing AoE. The Avatar has a big AoE and also a root that you have to kill. So what it does is it uses Glacial Tomb, it traps everybody in a block of ice that needs to be killed, and then it does this slam. If you're pulling these 2 mobs together, the slam is really, really hard to see. And so you have to be ready because you have this big screen effect on that the slam is gonna happen. And you have to run out of this. This wall right here is line of sight. If you're outside of it, you cannot cast inside. So you have to be in here. It's very, very annoying. Can you not skip that pack by jumping around the right? You might be able to. I guess I just don't know what the meta route will be. The intention of this is more so to prepare you for what you're gonna see as a healer rather than, you know, telling people how to route the dungeons or whatever, because who even knows what people are going to be doing at the end or what's going to be allowed or whatever. You can kind of jump around, but these guys are also good count, and most tanks I saw pulling them. Okay, this boss can be quite awkward. First, it gives 3 debuffs. I want to say I thought you could freedom this because it's a slow. Yeah, I think we'll see. We'll see if I do it. I thought you could freedom this, but I'm not doing it in the video. The debuff is not very nasty, so you mostly just heal through it. I would not necessarily describe it as the hard part. This boss is not really high damage. You just have to do the mechanics. The debuffs will be hurting at like a higher key though. Okay, so he spawns 2 guys, and most teams were trying to kill both of the guys before the intermission starts. One very common thing that happens is after you kill the guy, you need to soak. And everybody after you kill the first guy runs over to the next guy. So as a healer, always watch this soak. I saw that Terathal was getting it, so I ran into melee as well. Very often, if you're playing with zoo animals in dungeons, you're gonna have to get this soak. See, here's another one where this is really awkward because it's happening right as the intermission happens, and so our tank goes out and gets it. Okay, so this boss pushes you super far if you're not in this snow puddle. So you need to be in the snow puddle or you get pushed out here and then you take mad damage. So I thought this was a damage down too, but, or maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Anyway, the tank missed the soak because he was getting blown away. And so the soak goes off here. This is like a healing CD moment if that happens, but it didn't seem too bad even in an 18. And that's the whole fight, rinse, repeat. And so send healing CDs on the debuffs if you really need to, but they shouldn't be that scary. This is a pretty low HPS fight. And watch out for the soaks in case your DPS are focusing on the things. All right. This is, I would probably say, some of the most difficult trash, depending on how much you pull. Very, very common damage type. There's the big guy with the yellow nameplate that uses Primal Echo that does AoE damage. And then there are random bolts and single target stuff. This totem guy, the troll, creates totems. They are very, very low HP. Look, this is 25k HP. I'm pretty sure this dies in like 1 judgment if you're geared. So I would describe this as something you should be trying to do as a healer. Most of the time, these totems have too much health and you can't really contribute. But for these guys specifically, you want to be trying to hit these as a healer, especially like right there. You don't want to have a DPS have to use a very valuable global if they're in their cooldowns on a 25k health totem. There will be lots of bolts in this area. You will have to kick them. I believe the Mystic has a nastier cast that you have to kick. It could be a different mob, but I believe there was a like a lightning volley or some sort of deal. Yeah, here it is right here. Arc lightning. Arc lightning, again, very similar to the bears at the beginning. Arc lightning needs to be kicked. Therefore, bolts will go off because people are holding their kick for the arc lightning. So keep that in mind. These bolts will go off and you will need to heal them. This pack gets quite awkward because people like to drag this with something else, right? Because it's not that big. However, when you do this, it will spawn totems on the stairs. So as a healer, again, I mentioned it's kind of like a healer job. Try and make sure you stay back. Don't run ahead. Can be a great pull to send your trinket as you're running in. These saber fangs, I believe, fixate. So there's no AoE in this grouping, but there are fixates which add to the single target. And I don't think the fixates show any sort of debuff or anything. They just like turn red and give you an arrow. So this can catch you off guard, but I think you can just stun them and they're pretty easy to handle. More of the same, the mystics with the kick, the totem guys, the saber fangs. These bears are very, very scary. Having 2 bears that do the AoE back to back is quite scary. This is very high damage. And if you try to pull these 2 packs together, that can cause a wipe. Okay, to this guy. He is a mini boss. Don't get tricked in thinking this guy is the boss. He's not. He puts these earthquakes down. These earthquakes are very chill. Don't even really worry about them. Just slowly put up this damage. This is the scary moment. Volatile totem. So he spawns 3 totems. The totems actually have quite low HP. You can kill them quite quick, but they blow up. It spawns 3 and each one blows up. So you need to at least kill 1 as a group pretty quickly. Again, if you have monkey DPS that don't kill, this could be a very scary moment. This is send CDs. Look, that's the first tick of all the totems, takes our shaman to half. And that's with Aura Mastery active. This literally would have taken him to like 25% HP if it hadn't been for Aura Mastery. This is, again, a great chance to, like, as soon as you see the totem spawn, send your trinket. This is where you want to send your healing CDs or whatever. And the first initial 2 ticks are the scariest. So here's 1, here's 2, and then hopefully a totem has died by then. And now it kind of mellows out. So literally the second tick is what's going to kill people. So don't be asleep at the wheel and think like, oh no, here's damage coming. Time to press something. Like, have it rolling immediately. Like, you can see I press Aura Mastery before 1 tick even, right? I guess I kind of thought Devo was going to be enough. And that's all it is. He does these earthquakes. These puddles go away when the mob dies. So you don't need to worry about the area denial that much. You just don't want to be too big of a demon because you want to be able to hit the totems if your group has a lot of melee. This guy isn't too bad. He puts debuffs on 3 people that drop a bear, ghost, and it does initial damage. You just need to try and top them. It's not like a super big emergency. You just need to top them before the raid damage that goes out. So after the drops, the boss uses overwhelming something, ON. And this is the AoE damage. I would describe it as medium. It doesn't do a ton of damage. Like, that was no CDs, I'm pretty sure, and we didn't die through it. But they do need to be topped from the bear. And then basically rinse repeat. Just note that number 1, if you get hit by one of these bears, you get a bleed on you. So you want to make sure you try not to get knocked back into the bear. And number 2, there's a tank soak after. That is not a U soak. Get the hell out of that if you're a healer. And it is just literally that over and over again. There are a lot of like fixed cycle chill bosses like this tier. Again, overwhelming rage. I have some shields out. On a very high key, you'll probably need to pump some amount of healing in here to make sure people don't die, but you can see the burst is quite quick. And the most important mechanic is that you're topping people as you go into that mechanic. It's pretty quick. Then after a couple of those rotations, all the bears will turn red one by one and rush into the boss. Now, not the boss, but Zoljara, the NPC that's alongside the boss. For a long time, I thought I was trying to guard the bear, but you're actually trying to guard the troll person right there. So keep that in mind. The area for her getting hit is quite small, or him. Sorry, I don't know any of the lore. You just need to stand by that person and then heal. And that's it. It's just that over and over again. Quite simple. Just don't fall asleep while you're healing this boss and things are fine. All right, the new dungeon, Altar of Fangs. Okay, so the first objective of this area is to click all of the totems, and very likely it will be a healer job, so just be on the watch out for it. However, your team might walk into a really dangerous pull without you. The first thing to note is that each one of these primal serpents requires a kick, and if the kick goes off, it is group damage and group haste. It is very, very bad if these kicks go off. So if you can, try and watch one of them or whatever, and if you see a cast about to go off, use your CC. And as the DPS, make sure that you're focusing these guys and getting them, because these are very scary. Being a shaman and having a kick in this area will probably feel very, very good compared to other healers. So there are 2 notable mobs in this area. So the first is the Twin Fang Harrower. This guy constantly puts out debuffs on your party. The debuffs are very, very nasty. It's this right here, paralyzing something. It goes on 2 different people. The initial hit is pretty nasty, and it does ticking damage that I believe builds up. And so right away, you want to dispel these as fast as possible. These are slows, and it's a stacking slow also. So anybody who can remove slows on your own, you definitely want to be doing that. For example, Mage Barrier talent that removes slow, shapeshifting as a druid if you are not in your cooldowns, Tiger's Lust or Freedom, all this stuff removes these and should be used on it because it is a very dangerous mechanic. All right, so then on top of that, so that's what the Twin Fang guy does. He also has a frontal. You'll see it in a second. Then there's the Chieftain, what does Blood Sacrifice. It puts a debuff on everybody. That's a huge, chonky heal absorb. This is where you want to be using your big healing CDs on this thing. So it takes a little bit of time. The cast finishes, ghosts appear. You're like, what the hell is going on? But what this is a big wind up for a big healing absorb, and it's a dot where everyone's health will start ticking down until you clear this. Right away, this is where, like, let's see. Hopefully I send stuff here, right? This is, again, if you didn't use your trinket on the opener, this is a really good spot to use your trinket. Looks like I pressed Devo here, I think. Oh, my Devo was late. I guess I was in wings too. Yeah, and you can see everybody in the group is using their defensives on this moment. These are people who are sweaty and play on PTR a lot, so everyone knows to press their defensive here. This is where you want to be defensiving and healing CDs. This is blood sacrifice. Usually these guys will get 2 off, one pretty early in the pull and then one later. If you're in a low key or if you have like bloodlust and CDs, it might die in one, but be ready for the second one to go off almost always. I don't know what the hell's going on here. Am I just like not healing? What am I doing? Oh, okay. So this mechanic has gotten changed several times. The way I believe these chieftains are supposed to work is that they cannot be dragged away from their totem. And if they get dragged away from their totem, they pulse AoE damage. On the test realm, they were just permanently pulsing AoE damage, and they were very, very dangerous. I don't believe that is what is intended with these mobs, but we do not know. This is a very, very scary pull to be doing on the PTR, but I believe this pull may be normal and fine on live realms once those chieftains get fixed. But these chieftains may need to be fought by their totem, but we dragged it down here, which I don't think will be a thing. Yeah, I see now. I fell behind dramatically when I was putting up my Beacon of Virtue. Okay, so honestly, that's this whole area. So this is a chieftain alone, so it's going to do the big heal absorb. It's pulsing AoE damage, but it probably shouldn't. This AoE damage should not be happening, I believe. And then there's just some random, like, there's a little random damage from these serpents, but it's like very small. And then there is the serpents that you need to kick. So now we have to fight 2 harrowers. This pull can be really scary depending on if you have the ability to remove debuffs. So that one went on Tettles. I dispelled him and then I freed him, and they will keep spitting out these debuffs over and over. So you need to be careful. I think you might be able to pull one of these at a time, but people were not doing that on PTR. Again, dispel. You can see right away, every time the debuffs went out, this was priority number 1. I mentioned earlier that sometimes there are debuffs that, you know, you can let them sit or whatever and you just heal through them. That is not one of them. This, you need to dispel that ASAP, especially because the initial tick of it is so nasty. The rest of this trash is pretty simple. Again, the same. The chieftain with the heal absorb, chieftain with the heal absorb. It's doing way too much damage because it's PTR. All right, this boss. This boss has 2 damage moments. One of them is triple shot. It puts 3 debuffs on the party. The debuffs also splash, so you want to be somewhat spread when they go out. These are not particularly scary. I don't think. They definitely require you to juice some healing into people. It can go on the tank too, so you kind of want to pay attention to who gets targeted. For example, like, okay, we had 2 somewhat squishy DPS targeted, so I need to do big healing, whereas sometimes it might go on the unholy DK and the tank, and then it's very, very easy to heal. You cannot remove this. It looks like a poison, but it's not a poison. So the way this boss works is 2 of the puddles are overflowing, or puddles, sorry, the mounds. And if the boss eats one of those, it like tantrums and blows everybody up. And so your tank needs to drag the boss to the right mound that doesn't have the good food or whatever. And so if the intermission starts like this and then your party blows up, your tank probably dragged the boss to the wrong spot. During the intermission, there are soaks. The soaks don't hurt that much, but the intermission damage can be kind of bursty and kind of high. I feel like for some reason the first intermission is less than the others, but maybe I'm just making that up. Either way, both damage events I would describe as medium. None of them are like really, really impressive. None of them are super scary. So then the last thing I want to talk about is the frontal. World of Warcraft has created a situation where you always can just look at your feet and you always know when you're going to get hit. This boss has one of the few mechanics that you have to actually look at the boss. It uses this right here, this regurgitate, and this will shoot out 3 lines here. So when this happens, you have to be watching the boss and seeing where these lines are going to go. And this is very common. The boss will turn towards the range. So notice it's like, watch, all the rangers sitting here, it will target somebody when it does this. So it will turn and do that. So it's not like this is like the tank can do anything to control this. This will almost always go towards you. And that's it. That's like the whole fight. You get 2 sets of triples and then you get a intermission and then rinse repeat over and over and over again. So just space out your healing CDs. You're not going to have a healing CD for every single event, but it can be good to use them. So let's watch this intermission. For some reason, I remember the first intermission being easier. This poison stacks up. Yeah, so for whatever reason, the first intermission is easier. You see this one stacked to 4. So that was, again, kind of like a medium damage event. It was pretty heavy. That's usually where you want to send your defensives and healing CDs, but it's not a empty the bag moment. It's just make sure you have something so that you don't bleed out. All right. This area can be very scary. I'm sure some amount of you people have experienced this in M0, where this is like the only time that you actually wipe or blow up and you think your tank is a moron. So there are mobs here that we need to think about. The way that Yips pulled this, I've only seen Yips do this, but I feel like this is pretty good. These high evolutionists cast, they have two different casts. They have Envenom, which puts out a poison, and then they try to evolve. If you let them evolve and don't disrupt it, I believe it heals a little bit and it gives itself an uninterruptible volley. So you really want to make sure the evolves don't go off. And so you can see here, almost every tank will pull this, and this is 2 casters, and this guy is an AoE guy that we'll talk about in a second. Almost every tank will pull this here, so you want to be ready off the bat to heal. Yips did this thing where we like went along the side and didn't pull it, and I think this was actually quite smart. I don't know if you'll be able to get count doing this, but it is what it is. So then we came around. These bloodletters are really easy. Notice how many evolutionists we were able to skip. Oh, looks like we are pulling these. All right, I know this is going to be quite surprising what this pull is going to be, but you see a mob with a marker and you see a yellow nameplate, so you can probably guess. This guy is going to do unavoidable AoE damage, and then the high evolutionists are going to put out poison on single targets. This damage is very, very high. It's a 5-second cast that requires a major healing CD at least for every single one, and it happens, as you can see, like maybe 10, 12 seconds into the pull. So you can see there, I used my shield trinket, and everyone used a bunch of defensives. So make sure you're watching these high evolutionists to stop their evolves too. It is not kickable, so you still want to be always kicking the venoms and then using stops on the evolves. And similar to other AoE tantrum guys, usually you'll get 2 of these events, so be ready for this last one that happens near the end of the pull. You can see I pop wings and virtue and stuff. That is a very scary area. Okay, so this is a weird pull. So this has an evolved high evolutionist in it. So you can see how this guy is big and this guy is small. This is what happens if the evolutionist is allowed to evolve. It turns Envenom into Mass Envenom, and it gets a shield, and you cannot stop this until the shield is broken. You need to run in and damage. So I'm hitting the yellow guy probably because I'm an idiot healer, but you actually want to target the high evolution and break the shield down right away and be ready for this poison volley cast to get off. If your team doesn't hit that, it's going to get multiple Mass Envenoms off. Once the shield is broken, you can kick it, and it's normal. And again, remember, this is the rattle guy, so it's going to do AoE. This is the evolve cast right here. So again, all the stuff going on at once. There's the kick. Here comes the AoE and the evolve cast on the high evolutionist right here. So it's 6 seconds long. It's, it's not super hard to stop, but you just need to not be asleep. You can use any push, disorient, stun, whatever. And you can see the amount of damage that the rattle does when I don't have one of my big trinkets up. That thing hits really, really hard. Okay, this boss. This boss was nerfed pretty big on the PTR and ended up being quite easy. It's possible that it becomes demonic at super, super high keys, but it's pretty chill. This is essentially the ultimate rot boss. It puts this debuff on you for 35 seconds, which is it's not a poison, you can't remove it, but it just slowly ticks down your health. And other than that, it's just dodge. This is just a complete patchwork dodge boss. It has a kick mechanic, but we don't care about that because we're a healer. And that's it. This guy is quite simple. He just has like a frontal and a charge. You maybe try and bait the charge. Not much is going on this. This is literally just healer patchwork, push health bars up. One quick thing that you need to know, he will cast Death Rattle. It will pull everybody in, and you have to run out of his hitbox as fast as possible. So he does this thing where he tries to bait your movement ability here. He'll charge at the edge of the room, and very likely you'll like want to use a movement to get out of this cone or chase him or whatever. But then immediately after he does this, he'll use his thing, and this will need your movement ability ideally, or you waste a lot of time running out of this. All right, so this is the intermission. This is, they just fixate random people and have a kick. This is all DPS mechanics. The damage is very, very light in this phase. However, if these guys melee you, they give you a damage down. So you see that they are all fixating on our DPS, and our DPS are actually running away from the fixates because they do not want the damage down. I don't remember if you can dispel it or not, but once DPS figure out that it's a damage down, they will actually do the mechanic, and that's it. That's the whole boss. Quite easy. Okay, this room, quite scary. So you want to do this in one pull, but it's quite hard because there are 4 high evolutionists, so there's a lot of damage. This is a no AoE, but lots of single target debuff pull. So there is the Envenoms, and there's lots of casters that go out, and these blades jump at random players and give them a bleed. They have sort of like a pseudo RNG thing where they try not to stack on one person, but you know, you can be targeted by a bleed and a poison, and things are scary. There is a lot of group damage. Yips here plays safe and just does it in 2 pulls, probably because every time he's tried to do it in 1 pull, his group just blows up. If you're a pug tank and you get to this point and your timer's good, probably doing this is a smart thing, but also you will probably see a lot of people just grab all of it in 1. There are also mobs at the top of the stairs that you could drag in at some point if you need to separate this into 2 pulls to make it a little bit more efficient. Yeah, but same mobs. Okay, this, I don't understand why this isn't a boss. It's literally just like a boss with a little bit less health, but you can't release while you're fighting it, I don't think. And it has mechanics and shit. Okay, puts a debuff on everybody. This is the main damage event where you want to be sending stuff. The first one isn't too scary, but now it spawns these hatchlings everywhere that attack people. And I believe they just fixate. I don't think the tank can get threat of them. And so now on the next ones, you have to deal with the circles and the mobs hitting you. So this is where the damage is going to start to ramp up. So around here, was like 20-30 seconds into the pull, this is where you need to start sending your CDs. So like right here, when he does his second wave, we actually have a lot of damage. I guess we have Ellie, Shaman, Boomkin, Arcane Mage, so we have a shit ton of AoE. But essentially the first circles press a little bit, and then the second set of circles is where you really want to start sending CDs, because now all the ads are going to start to stack up and fixate people, and it's going to hurt real bad. So we go up here. These are those 2 mobs that I'm talking about. So the living venom, each one of these Ulatek's chosen has a bunch of these living venom by them. They have low HP and don't do anything, but they blow up when they die. And so when this pack of mobs dies, it does extreme group damage. So you have to be watching the health of these mobs. Also, kind of annoyingly, they count as like lesser mobs. And so the nameplate gets shoved up to your top of your screen. And so it's harder to keep track of them. But maybe having one selected or just watching it or whatever, but you need to send something here. Like, this is a great opportunity to use your trinket. One mistake that I was making a lot in this was I would send a lot of healing CDs on this guy, and then I would have nothing for these pulls, but these pulls are quite scary. So try not to overuse on this guy and try and think like, what do I have in the bank here? So for example, here I did use wings and Devo, but I do have my trinket. So my mindset here should be I just trinket right away as the mobs get anywhere near low HP. But I do not do that, I believe, and our group is very scared. I should press wings or something. Yeah, see, this is just me either not knowing or not respecting the content, because that is absolutely press CDs when this stuff blows up. Also, the Ulatek's chosen has a kick, so if randomly your team gets mass poisoned and everyone's dying, then that's why that happened. This room, it's very easy for your tank to overpull. I think we were like waiting for CDs or doing it for fun or whatever, but each one of these blades puts out a bleed. And this is only just a bunch of these bleeds. And you can see they just come out like bang, 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 one after the other. And they can stack. You saw Terathal just got 2. These are really scary when paired with these living venoms that blowed up. So the way that Yips did it, this is probably like the liquid farming keys, never wipe, but still go kind of fast strategy that Yips did, where he pulled only these slimes and then he pulled a shit ton of blades and then pulled only these slimes. Realistically, in a high key or with top routes, you'll probably have to find some way to pull blades with these slimes, but this is like the pug approved thing. Now we have a combination of some of the mobs that we've seen in the dungeon. We have the Harrower from the very beginning that puts out the 2 debuffs, and we have the blades that do the single target debuffs, and we have the serpents that we have to kick. So don't forget about these kicks, as we're healers though, so we don't care. This pull can be pretty dangerous. Again, watch the initial damage of these spits. It's very high. If you can sort of predict when the spits are about to come out, that's when you're going to be wanting to use your defensives or healing CDs. But it happens so fast, and the people are, you don't know who's targeted, that it can be hard to do if you're trying to freeform this dungeon. If you're trying to sight read this pull, it may be dangerous. But yeah, this is a pretty scary pull, but it's just lots of single target. Use your cooldowns on the what's it called, when the spits are about to come out, to make sure people don't get womboed. But if you like get bled and get the debuff at the same time, like that's basically all your health at a high key. Okay, finishing this pull. Okay, this pull, a lot of times your lust is up here, and I wouldn't be surprised if people lust this pull. I actually don't think it's that scary, but it does look very scary. So basically, we have the very first double chieftain pull. However, they are offset, so you don't get double blood sacrifice. This is the heal absorb guy from the beginning. You don't get double heal absorb. It just happens back to back to back. So if you have bloodlust, it's very easy to heal through, and otherwise just like rip your healing CDs or whatever. But this pull looks mega scary and demonic, but it's not actually that bad because this Ulatek's Chosen just casts and does the lines, and these blades do a little bit of damage. But the big scare is if someone has a bleed into a blood sacrifice. So like right now, oh, okay, well, our cast didn't get kicked. Yeah, so this is a scary moment. Heal absorb into that, but HPAL is okay. 2 kicks went off. Okay, this is not ideal, but we still live it. So yeah, not as scary of a pull as I was saying. All right, this guy is a mega knowledge check. You'll just die if you don't know how this guy works, so I'm just going to explain it, even though if it's not healers. So you have to soak all 4 of these beams. If he gets beamed, then he blows you up, I'm pretty sure. It's very, very bad. The beams I would describe as medium damage. Don't need to send major healing CDs, but you do need to do some amount of healing. It's similar to the last boss of Den of Nalorakk. So then it has this ability that puts a red line on the ground. It's called Bone Slicer. Now, anybody who soaked the beam has a debuff on them. The debuff, after it runs out, will blow up. So everybody needs to clear their debuff. In order to clear the debuff, you need to get bled. And in order to get bled safely, you need to stand in this beam. Technically, you can stand in the glaives things that are moving around, but those do a lot of damage. So the way a lot of us were doing this on PTR was, okay, well, we actually split it up. So there's 2 ways you can do this as a healer. You can just decide what your preference is and tell your team, or just deal with it however they do it. You can have everybody get the bleed at the same time and then send healing CDs, or you can try and split it up. Either one I think is fine. What I kind of decided to do is I just wouldn't take it as a healer, and then I would just heal everybody else, and then I would be the sole person to get it on the next one, and then I would just defensive. And that was like my strategy for this boss. But you can do it a lot of different ways. This is the highest damage event, though, if you have multiple people clearing your bleed. Importantly, the puddles drop do damage, so you need to be moving during this. And very often, your DPS will not wanting to be moved. You're going to have a Moonkin that needs to sit there and press Starfall. And so people may take a lot more damage than you would expect in there because they're standing in the blood puddles while they're clearing because they want to cast abilities. It's a very long sequence of forced movement that not a lot of casters can deal with. And that's it. That's the whole fight. Rinse, repeat. Then it goes back to the pillars. So Yips does a good job of tanking this here by moving it back to the center right away. This allows us to position ourselves to know who's going to get what line before it starts. The beams start pretty quick, so it's a good idea, in my opinion, to get here and get in position before it even starts so that there's no last minute weird stuff. And that's it. That's the whole boss. How did we die here? Let's just watch this for science. Oh, okay. I'm just a complete idiot. So my plan here was I have my trinket and I want to trinket this, so I may as well just walk into it myself. And I don't know what I do here, but I don't press my trinket. Like, I just press it so late and then I just die because I'm standing in 4 puddles or whatever. Yeah, don't do that. That's enough of that boss, though. All right. Murder Row. Finally, as a healer, take a deep sigh. You have an area of the dungeon that you can relax that doesn't do that much damage. This area may appear very scary. There are these mages that are permanently casting stuff and mobs jumping around, but there is not very much damage in the beginning area of this. If you pull the other guard captain or whatever, there can be a little bit more. This guy gives like shields mobs around him or DRs them or something. So he's just slow to pull, but he's not necessarily scary. But yeah, this area at the beginning is turbo easy. I honestly like barely even know what happens. It just does some random incidental damage. There are 4 snitches that you need to talk to. Usually this is a healer job, but be careful what your team is doing. And we'll go over the important part where that matters in a second. But again, these first couple pulls are chill, so I just kind of do it. All right, another easy pull, same mobs. There is a Sayad, is that how you pronounce this? That has a sleep cast that needs to get stopped or interrupted or whatever. So watch out for that randomly. Like, this mob is like way in the back and you might be not paying attention for that. These bleeds and these missiles are pretty chill. You can see people get targeted by a lot of stuff and they take damage, but it's pretty chill compared to most of the other mechanics. Okay, so this next pull, Yips is doing it again in a very safe, reasonable way, but a lot of other people were dragging this stuff up here. This is where the damage starts to get real and you can't no longer sleep as a healer, so keep that in mind. This pull is reasonable though, it's pretty fine. I think we just kill it. And so we're not chaining any mobs up here, but some tanks will chain stuff in here. I don't quite know why the damage here is so high. I think the only difference is there's this Fellworm mob, but I don't think he does that much. Oh, I forgot to mention the poison. I believe it's the hooligans that do this poison, and this is a stacking max HP reduction on your tank. So you definitely want to be dispelling this. You don't necessarily need to dispel it at 1 or 2 stacks, but you know, if you ever see like 3 or more, you should send a dispel. Especially with Blood Decay. Blood Decay needs that max HP as their room to maneuver their health bar. So make sure you are dispelling Blood Decay, which may be meta this season. Yeah, so whatever it is about this pull, why these guys do so much damage, maybe there's like a more bleed guys and I don't recognize them or whatever, but this stuff is very heavy damage. We played it in a way that was very safe, but be ready to send CDs right off the bat. There are these dispels that happen. I mean, all this stuff is just dots. The bleeds and the debuffs are just small damage over time events, but not much to say other than press healing buttons here. No crazy tech. All right, this boss can be a bit scary if you aren't prepared. So for starters, you want to always hit the little dragon guy. The main boss has a very big DR component. It will spawn images throughout the room that you need to use any sort of CC on. As a healer, you probably want to be doing this because I think it spawns like 4. So if someone messes up their kick or whatever, or it's like far away and the melee can't do it, be ready to contribute with, you know, Hajj or sweep or ring or anything. I'm not sending virtually any CDs at any point during this. This phase is very easy to heal. It's the intermission that gets scary. The only damage really comes out during this part of the fight where the ghosts are popping up. And so just make sure you're not just totally AFK when that happens. Then when the worm goes to 20%, the intermission starts. This is the very scary part where you will be sending all of your CDs. It is a 20-second, I believe, damage amp that just pulses a crazy amount of damage. And especially crazy because like nobody's defensives are lasting 20 seconds, right? So there will be plenty of time in this, even if people play their defensives well, where they are just getting hammered because they're not pressing any of their defensives, right? And depending on the key level, this guy may live a long time. You know, if you did this in M0, you probably just saw the Nibbles guy die quick as hell. And so you know, you may worry about saving cooldowns for each phase, but like, for example, in a high key, I think it was almost 90 seconds apart. Like you could use 90-second CDs on every single phase, and then 2-minute CDs you could potentially use every other. That's it, rinse, repeat. Also, don't be afraid to send any healing CDs here because next is the whatever cleaning up game. Yeah, I'm not really going to talk about strategy here. This one will be for you guys to figure out. Okay, this pull is quite scary. This is something that you may see a lot because chances are everybody has their healing CDs and you probably have Bloodlust up as well. And so usually you pull all this trash onto this boss. However, this trash does do bleeds and the boss does an AoE quite quick. So you want to be ready to send healing CDs right away on pull. This is another example of probably just rip your trinket right away. This icon right here is the AoE event. I don't remember what the thing is called. It's like machine guns or whatever. This is the main damage of the fight. So every time you see this, get ready to heal. It does like high damage. I wouldn't describe it as infinite, but you need to put healing into everybody in your party or they will die. Killing spree. And it just starts instantly. The reason that this damage event is scary is because there's no wind up or no anything. It just rips it. And so you need to be ready for this ahead of time. You can see how much damage it's doing. It's not going to like, you know, do 3 health bars worth, but you will absolutely need to put healing into people. Other than that, the damage is quite moderate once the trash dies. You want to blow up these poison barrels because they will blow up and hurt you. Otherwise, you don't blow up anything else. And that's it. That's like basically the whole fight. So what the boss will do is... Okay, so this is a great example, by the way. So this is something to talk about. You may have ran into this in M0, but you don't get punished. But if you do this in a key, it's going to kill you. So notice there are 2 barrels here, one here and one here. You cannot hide behind this barrel. What will happen is one bullet will go here and then the next bullet will go here, but it'll hit you because it's going towards it, right? So if you get this formation, for example, you need to have 2 people hiding back here is what the solution is. You cannot hide behind this barrel. Is there a 4th barrel? How does a shine live? Let's see what happens here. Oh, Yips gets hit. So see, Yips gets hit by one of them, but it doesn't matter because he's a tank. It sends 1 bullet per person. You cannot have multiple people hiding behind the same barrel. If 3 people are behind one barrel, it'll shoot 1 and then it'll kill the rest of the people. So if 5 people are behind the second one, 2 will live, but 3 will die. And that's the whole fight. So again, the killing spree comes up quick. So here, right, everybody's worried about the barrels and the positioning, but this killing spree is about to come out and it just happens instantly. Like watch this damage. It just starts instantly. No cast, no warning, no anything. So always be watching your boss mods for the killing spree and then be ready to heal it. All right, next area. There are a bunch of very different mobs. The imps are similar to the mages in that they just spam cast, but the casts don't do very much damage. The Punisher, oh, let's talk about the Fell Hunters. The Fell Hunters, I believe, like jump out and do a bleed. So again, 2 small single target guys. And you guessed it, what the Punisher does is it does AoE. However, it only does the AoE below 50% health. So this pull is pretty easy. And then now you see it gets below 50. And now this is when the AoE starts. So you have to be careful getting this mob low with any other mobs because this can do some pretty heavy damage. All right, next is these warlocks. These are also really tanky mobs. They have a bunch of warlock abilities. They drain life. The drain life doesn't hurt too bad. You do kind of need to spot heal that person. However, it heals the mob. So if you have any sort of like shadow meld or invis, you can actually stop the drain. The warlock also puts out Curse of Doom on somebody. This does a lot of damage. Ideally, you want a Curse Dispel in this dungeon. This is something that you should be Curse Dispelling even as a DPS if you're playing with the Holy Pally. You don't necessarily need to Curse Dispel it, but what will happen is it'll be a soak. You can see it around Terrathal right here. And so when it goes off, it's going to do a shit ton of damage to everybody in. You can have like 3 or 4 people in the soak and they'll still live, but they'll get quite low. And your tank may not be able to get in it for whatever reason. And the warlock shields. So these warlocks are really tanky. It's really important that you prioritize this guy because this guy will hold up your group. Absolutely. All right, more casters, more of these, another Punisher, all the same. Okay, let's see. Did we fight the mini boss? Okay, so this mini boss is demonic. He has a blade dance spell, I believe, that does, it's essentially just like the gunshots of the last boss where it just goes off instantly and does a shit ton of damage over 3 seconds. He is very, very scary. You do not want to fight this guy. Pretty much all of our test realm, we were running to the side of him. I suspect that Blizzard may not like that you're skipping that guy and they may stop you from doing that. But for now, I don't have any tips or footage of him because we always would skip him. All right. Third boss. This guy has a no damage at all and then a very, very heavy damage moment. So he targets somebody with an axe. The axe will ramp damage on the group. The axe is not necessarily the scary part. It's the first in a gauntlet of scary abilities. If you get targeted by the axe, it doesn't do anything. So you want to run on top of the boss so that your team can cleave it down right away. So you can see the damage starts ramping. This is ability number 1. And these will almost always happen in the sequence, but the timings may be slightly different depending on the how far in of the boss you are. So first it does the axe. Ideally the axe is dead in time for the next one, which is Infernal Crush. This puts circles. There's no puddles or anything. All this is a spread mechanic that does damage. So it's axe into crush, and then it does whatever this demonic rage. This is the check to make sure that you topped everybody before or after the axe and the other thing. This does a shit ton of damage. Look at Tettle. Let's see Tettle's health. He had bark. We're healing. Okay, I guess he's not that high, but this will do a lot of your health. So ideally what I was doing was like, depending on your defensive, if you can defensive and it'll last from the crush and the rage, that's ideal, but you may need to defensive just the rage. Like basically you want to press your defensive as early as possible as you can so that it goes off in the rage, or rather it's still active during the rage. And that's also the same for like externals like Sack and Diva Aura or whatever cooldowns that you have rolling. After the rage though, you're chilling. You're good for a long time and you have a lot of downtime to catch up. So you need to make sure you're sending a major healing CD during those and then using this time to rebuild. You can see how much time we have. And then even when the axe spawns, it's not really that heavy. It just starts to ramp up like this. All right, and that's it. It just goes on that cycle. Oh, lastly, it has this mechanic where it hits the tank and then it creates a puddle under the boss and the tank has to like drag it slowly. This thing hits really fast and pretty hard. You can see me here. Like watch how fast this ticks me when I get near the puddle. Or did I already do it? Yeah, see right there. I literally dipped into it for like 0.1 second and it did 30% of my health. So be careful during any of these moments, like the spread and the axe or whatever, that you don't accidentally step into the puddle, because that is how you can easily die. Okay, same. Okay, now we have a new mob. This is the golem. People on the PTR were skipping this one. You can actually jump up here on the side and run by it. However, there is one later, so we need to learn about it anyway. More imps that cast. These guys just have a bleed. Same thing. AoE damage and then single target damage with the bleed over and over again. It's the same healing profile in like every single pack. This guy, his cast is Defiling Slam. It does 3 very large chunks of damage and happens pretty quick into the pool. So we'll go in right here. He's in combat for like 5 seconds, 6, 7, 8, and then okay, it goes off one tick, 2 ticks, and 3 ticks. So this, it hurts pretty bad. You can see that's even like with defensive popped and healing CDs, this does a lot of damage, and you have to have a major healing CD for basically every single one of those. Then it does fell beams that target you, but those can be avoided. You just need to move and don't get hit by the puddle. Your DPS may stand in them. Sorry about that if they do. Then it just does slam again. Again, very similar to the other mobs that we've talked about. It does AoE. It usually gets at least 2 off, 1 when it's low HP. These guys are actually quite tanky and can get 3 if there's other stuff going on, so keep that in mind. And these are only single targeters, the fell hunters that bleed. These guys bleed as well, I think. Oh, no, these guys have a cast. Or yeah, either way, same old shit. No AoE damage, nothing new. Then we start getting some weird combinations of mobs. I've seen a lot of tanks do different stuff here. He's pulling only the Warlock and not her, because you kind of want to prioritize both of these mobs. For timer, if you pull both of these together, you prioritize the Warlock, but keep in mind that might leave her. This is the AoE Punisher that AoEs at 50% health or less, so if you leave her low health for a while, it might be scary. So he actually pulls it separately, which most tanks on the PTR were not doing that, and just focusing the Warlock. This is the same old. What happens here? Oh, so we actually walk by the Punisher. That's quite interesting. That's another very good decision. All right, so now we have another Golem. This is a mandatory pull. You cannot avoid this pull. These packs, by the way, the shit that's around here is no go. This is ultimate danger. If you fall down here or decide to aggro this or do anything, you're basically just dead. Like, this is 2 Punishers and a Golem. You will have no business fighting this. Again, this can be really scary and overwhelming because it can kind of come at you quick, and there's puddles everywhere, so it gets chaotic. In general, as a healer, hopefully this message is like coming across, right? Is a lot of packs have these mobs, they're champion mobs, and they have a big AoE ability, and you want to be ready for them, right? And just constantly being aware of what is going to AoE in the pack and when is it going to go off, and pressing your CDs accordingly is a huge part of healing the dungeons this season. And then there are lots of other incidental debuffs, some of which can be avoided or dispelled or whatever, but most of which will just kind of like hit your group, and you have to watch out if you get those. Okay, so now on the last boss. This boss is a little bit awkward to heal, especially if everyone is not on the same page. Pretty quickly into the fight, it'll put circles on everybody that spawn a bunch of adds. This is the main damage event of the fight that you need to be healing. So get ready to rip stuff here. It does damage, and it spawns adds that will cast and whatever. Ideally, for your healing, your team all stays here and kills all of the adds first and then moves back to the boss. However, you may find players who don't want to do that. For example, if you're playing an arcane mage and you start surging the boss and it jumps away, you want to blink over there and keep hitting it, and you can blink over the line, so you don't need to use the gateway. So you want to stick with the adds, but just know that your team may not here, and make sure you're, strategizing your abilities accordingly. So then you have to wait for this wave to get off. Our team is Omega Patters, so they killed the adds very quick. You can use your Warlock Gateway Keybind, by the way. Don't forget that if you have that and you have that bound, you can actually use the Warlock Gate toy here, even though it's like the enemy, it's like an NPC Warlock or whatever, it still works. So this is essentially the highest damage of the fight from when the circles happen to when you gate. And then once you gate, you're more or less stabilized. But it's the splitting up to the gate and the adds that are doing the most damage. So this period right here is kind of where you want CDs rolling, and then it slows down. Also, if somebody gets hit by the ring, which some people might because they're dumb, it puts a debuff. Not saying anything about any of my teammates in particular. It puts a very like long dot on them, but it's not actually super lethal. So keep that in mind as a healer. I attempt to try and keep my mage alive in this 18. Mainly because Holy Paladin is really good and it was only an 18 and because I'm a Giga Chad. Don't let your team wipe because you're trying to keep a guy up though. Like if he's got to die, he's got to die. Yeah, and so this is the same thing again, rinse repeat, right? So here I am, I'm healing my mage. Okay, here's the circles. So this is where the damage starts. This is where I want to start ramping my healing. I press my virtue. I have wings rolling. It would have been a good opportunity for my trinket. We're gonna stay, and not do anything and just wait for the ring to go out and kill all the adds. Trying to keep our guy alive, and then once the cast starts, we hit our gateway toy. But again, everyone's kind of spread out here, so it's getting a little, you know, this is where it's scary. But then as soon as I don't know what our boomkin's doing, but as soon as everyone gets here, now it's like kind of stabilized again, right? So it's maybe a 15 to 20 second window on and off, like every minute, where you want to be doing big healing. And that's pretty much it. That's the whole fight. Rinse, repeat. I think there's a Blinding Vale next. Okay. Blinding Vale. This is what I would consider one of the harder dungeons and some of the hardest bosses. This is definitely the lock-in dungeon for me. Not every pull is scary, but I would describe this as the hardest to heal dungeon. Okay, so these lashers put a stacking debuff on what they're hitting. Ideally, they're only hitting the tank, but sometimes the one will go on the DPS. Having one debuff on a DPS isn't too bad, so you don't need to waste the global on a dispel. This mini boss does an uproot. It's not a very high damage event, but it can catch you off guard if there are bleeds and there's the knock and there's the damage and you kind of fell asleep. But in general, this is like a pretty safe, easy first pull, has been kind of a theme with some of our routes here. You could probably go further with Bloodlust, but I think it's fine to just put priority damage into that guy. Okay, so a lot of lashers. These guys don't really do much. There is a Radiant spell guy here. I believe this is a caster. But my nameplates are messed up, I guess, for this VOD. Yeah. So this is another mob. I mentioned this in an earlier dungeon, but this guy is a bolter with volleys. Honestly, the bolts are like pretty much made to go off, so don't expect every bolt to get kicked, and be watching these as a healer and paying attention. This is an extremely safe version of the route. I think we should pull the big guy as well. Maybe we pull it with other stuff later. I mean, this isn't bad because this is like a chill pull, right? We send our CDs on the first pull. This is an easy pull, and then we have CDs for the big guy. These spell guys, when they get low health, they like activate these flowers and run towards them. I don't know exactly how it works or what's going on, but just be ready like to maybe CC him or whatever, or stop him from running into shit. Okay, now we get the beefy tree boy. This guy does a lot of AoE and he does it very quick. So this spell, sprouting flowers or whatever, this will be a initial damage and dot AoE. I have a big thing on my screen. Now it can catch you a little off guard here because it's just like going off. After it finishes, there's no animation or debuff or anything. There's no way to know, but this will be damage that hits you multiple times. So watch. Sprouting, it goes off, we take damage, and then it's still going here, look. So I don't even know exactly how long it goes. It's about like 6 seconds. So keep that in mind that it isn't just a one-time damage event. And then next pull is another one of these guys. That's pretty much all the trash in this area. There's the uproot knockback guys, there's the caster, and there's the beefy boys that do the AoE. In a more aggressive route, you may have to deal with multiple of them at the same time. You may need to deal with, say, a knockback guy and the big AoE guy if you're doing an aggressive route, in which case, like, always make sure that you have defensives and big shit going off when there's an overlap. More of this. Just, this is all the same trash. So, to note as well, you can go left or right, and there is different trash on the right. Most of that stuff was really demonic and required a lot of kicks and weird stuff, and we opted, like, never to go that way. So, I'm only telling you what the stuff goes on the left, because I only went to the left. Alright. So, this boss is really weird. This ability right here, where this person gets this big circle and then they get a bleed, I believe. It's either a bleed or just a straight up debuff. This is actually the scariest part of the fight. It's mild group damage, like pretty small, but one person just starts getting trucked. And this is where the damage happens. And this is where you need to press your major healing CDs. It hits everybody. Like, you can see the damage from the thingy isn't crazy, but the person with the bleed who gets targeted is in very, very high danger. And that is absolutely who you want to be spot healing and who should be defensiving. This is just like a stupid dodge thing. This is like pretty straightforward and easy, but just know that it'll actually kill you in high keys. And then lastly, there's this soak mechanic. One thing that you don't actually have to stand directly in it. You can be close to it. Like, for example, if you look at a shine, he actually stood on the very edge of it. That way he doesn't have to move when the soak starts. This damage is very mild. This is not very difficult to heal. Don't get super panicked and send a CD. This is the scary damage that you need to heal. This is like, okay, you see this and now you're like, okay, you're popping CDs. So make sure everyone is topped from the soaking, but usually just normal healing abilities can deal with the soak. And again, spot healing and defensiving whoever gets the bleed, and then rinse repeat. Again, right here, this is the scary part. Right here's the soak. Slam goes out, big AoE damage, and a shine is targeted. This is through wall, by the way. Like, he's taking the same amount of damage as everyone else through his wall while everyone else is pressing nothing. Okay, now we're going into the hardest trash pull in the game. This is omega scary. There's a lot of stuff going on. Almost every tank is probably going to pull all of this together, so keep that in mind. So remember, big boy right away, he does the AoE. So very early into the pull, you're going to be getting hit with this AoE. There are multiple bleeds going out. There's 2 bleeds. There is the Raptor, which does his cone frontal, which you don't want to be standing in. There is the swirlies from the big boy, and there's a bird that you have to kick, and there's an uproot. This is like every single thing in the dungeon in one pull, and this is usually a good use of lust if you somehow have it up. And usually I send all my healing CDs on this pull. I try to make it a point to not walk away from this pull with a healing CD, as I did this dungeon more on PTR. Because you can see now the big boy is getting the AoE. Like, there's just so much to keep track of on this pull. The main thing is you want to be watching the AoE guy when he gets his ability off, syncing your healing cooldowns with him, and then trying to watch whoever has the bleeds while you're dodging the hunting leap and up. I mean, it's crazy. This is a very, very difficult pull. Completely empty the bag with like everything on this whenever you do this. This boss can be pretty hard to heal as well. I mentioned this was a hard dungeon. He does a knockback and then he does a root. The roots need to be disoriented, or the roots are really weird. You can disorient them, but only disorient. Many of the other mechanics, it's like disorient or stun or CC or whatever. These roots are literally only disorient. So think like Blinding Sleet from DKs or Blinding Flash from Paladins. Only really those mechanics work. Also, it is a root, so things like Way of the Crane or Freedom or whatever can work on it as well. These root dots are pretty nasty, and you want to be doing what you can ideally to remove them. Mage Barrier does not work, unfortunately. It's not a slow, it's just a root. And those stomps can be very sneaky in how much damage they do, or rather the stomp into the root. Now the big damage event of the fight is Thorncaller Roar. This is something that you want to keep track of. The spell queuing of this boss we found in testing was really, really weird. So just be cognizant of when it can cast Thorncaller's Roar based off of your boss mods. It won't always be this clean where it's like, okay, in 5 seconds. Sometimes it'll just sit here and not cast for a while. This boss was like weird. And it can overlap with other stuff, right? Like it can do this, it can do a knockback and then immediately start doing this. And that's so it basically just does all those mechanics on a cycle over and over. If you ever get knocked into one of these roots, you also get the root debuff on you, which does damage, and that's bad. It has a fixate. This can be shadow melded or whatever. I don't even think this can go on a healer. I don't remember this ever going on me in testing. It might not be able to go on a healer. This boss gets hard when it reaches 50% health. It goes into light crazed frenzy and it starts pulsing AoE damage while doing all of its other mechanics. So for example, it has this the tantrum thing that I told you that you need to heal a lot during, and it enrages and uses that, and now it's just pulsing mega damage. And this is where for sure you want to be pressing defensives and healing CDs. Here I play really bad and I don't press anything and get lucky. Oh nope. Am I gonna get lucky? We'll find out. Either way, you can see how poorly this is going when I'm not pressing my buttons correctly, and how scary this would have been on a higher key. Like any key higher than this, we would have absolutely just full wiped there with how poorly I played. And then, yeah, this is just rinse repeat again, except for now it's pulsing damage the whole time. And so with your big healing CDs, hopefully this kind of makes sense, right? Of remember this pull. This is the scary pull. We send all of our healing CDs. Then in the first half of this boss, we just kind of chill and let everything come back because it's not that scary. And then when he gets to 50, we should have everything back up again. And then this is send everything and empty the bag again for the rest of the boss. And you can choose to lust him below 50 as well. That may be a strategy. It may be so difficult that you do like a healer lust. All right, I'll be honest. I don't remember a whole lot about what these guys do. This guy does a bleed on the tank or something. I think there's just a lot of stuff to dodge in this pull. There's the raptor that jumps around that does the frontal. The seed shot does a little damage. Mostly this stuff is just dodge and easy to heal though. This is where things start to get chaotic because here's the big boy again. So now we're going to have AoE in the mix of all the things. And oh, I believe these mobs blow up when they die. I don't know if they blow up when they die or when the shields break or something, but whenever you pull these mobs, I'm pretty sure they do damage. So you have to be careful, especially if the big boy is going off. Wherever you pull the big boy in this area, it can be very scary because there's just a shit ton of dodging going on and he still does his unavoidable AoE. And there's the hunter, these raptors or whatever that are denying space. So this can be a very dangerous pull as well. Sometimes we were actually skipping the sides of the room or whatever and just doing the boss without fighting all this trash because it was that bad. This is a pretty reasonable way to pull it. Also, this stuff leaves puddles when you kill it. So you want to make sure that you're careful. Like, it might be tempting to chain this into boss, but just make sure that if you're doing that, you're tanking him like over here because these puddles sit here for like a pretty long time, I think. And this is a boss where you need to spread out. Okay, this is another very challenging boss to heal. You will see us experiment. You get a series of lines that will shoot out from your character. We had the bright idea of trying to stand on top of each other because I believe this worked at M0 and it does not work anymore. If you stand on top of somebody, you blow each other up. So do not do that. Okay, now we go back to the boss. This boss has 3 phases. The first phase is the light phase. This is the main damage event of the phase. It's these dots. It puts out 3 of them, and you probably want to try and pop something for most of them, or at least have some way to top everybody quickly. I'll describe it as medium damage. And I think that's really all it does. I'm pretty sure it's just got like a kick and swirlies, and it just repeats that one mechanic over and over again. Yeah, this light fire thing. At 66%, maybe 70, it turns into the bleed guy. This is the bleed phase. As soon as it turns into this guy, it puts a bleed on everybody. So note that this guy could have casted light and then immediate. Oh no, he didn't. Okay, see how he cast Lightfall here? This is just the swirly spell. This guy could have put debuffs on all 3 of us, then phased and then put bleeds on everybody. This can be a very dangerous part that you have to look out for if it's spell cues in that way. If it goes debuffs into bleeds right now. So this is a grievous bleed. In WoW terms, that means you need to top that person in order to remove it. So this is now the main damage event of the fight where you need to heal all this stuff. So this is where you should be sending CDs. It looks like I'm having some sort of UI issue here. I don't have a major CD sent, and you can see how much extra damage my team is taking. Then it does pulverizing strikes. This will then target 3 people and do 3 more bleeds, or rather it's a debuff. It is not removed by bleed removals, and it puts a frontal cone on them. So the people who are targeted want to be spread out. So if you look right here, we get targeted and our boomkin and mage are here. So I walk over here just to make sure that we're not cleaving it. This is very easy, but becomes much more important in phase 3. And doing the same thing again, healing CD or something for the bleed, get the debuff, spread around. Now at 40%, the boss goes Super Saiyan. It uses Spirits of the Veil, and it summons both of the spirits. So now you have to deal with both mechanics at the same time. Now there's always overlap. So now it does light debuffs into bleed, the same thing that could happen in the first phase. And then it will do Starfall and then the frontal thing. So this right here, this is where you want to be sending your big healing CDs and defensives is as the lights are ticking, because this is going to go right into the big initial bleed hit. You want to make sure you cover both of those. And then once you get topped, then you're kind of chilling for a little while. Then there's one more like frontal thing going on. Okay. So now there's the pulverizing strikes, but remember, this is the guy, it's not the boss. And so if we made a triangle around the boss, for example, we might get messed up. And this guy can spawn at kind of like random places. So keep in mind where this guy's spawning if you can pay attention so that you don't grief your team. And that's it. This is another boss that gets very scary as it gets low health. So you want to be saving a lot of your CDs and have stuff to use for the last phase because it is very scary. All right. So now you have a choice of going left or right again. You will see our potatoed mini boss here that spawns. Blizzard very much wants you to pull this guy. I don't know at what stage in the PTR this is, but basically at every point that we tried to find a way to get away from, like, to skip this guy, Blizzard added a new trigger to make him pull. So I'm pretty sure this guy will just eventually always get pulled. We don't skip it. The scary part of this guy is his poison volley. He has like an AoE damage thing that he does. So just be ready for that. I think he has a knockback and then he summons some ads. And see, you can see how it just, they just randomly add triggers to make this guy pull. So I mean, you can literally see that we don't pull him in the clip, right? Like you can see that he's not pulled. So this is scary because we have the big boy with the AoE that comes quick, and we have the toad. The toad's AoE isn't super fast though, so they'll just be back to back. But again, so healing CDs off the rip against the big boy, and now toxic spew. This is the volley. You can see how hard the poison hits. It is a poison though, so you can remove it. And one last note about this guy is you often fight this guy in the water because people want to go left, and it's very hard to see these swirlies in the water. The water texture makes these swirlies very tough. So don't forget that there's like permanent swirlies, even though the water is like blue-green. Yeah, this is a very scary pull, and this is difficult, but there's not really much I can say. It's just the big boy AoE and then the toxic spew over and over again with the frog knockback. Also, there is a secret in this waterfall if you ever want to visit him. No spoilers. Okay, so I think we pretty much know all the mobs in the dungeon now. Usually these are quite scary mobs, and so you try not to pull too much of this. A lot of people were skipping as much of this as possible on the PTR. Let's see if we do it. Yeah, so this guy, it looks like you have to pull something to get to the boss, but you can actually hug left if you clear this pack right here and walk all the way around. I don't know if this is going to be a thing, if they're going to, you know, reposition mobs or anything, but this is what everybody was doing on the PTR. All right, this is what I would describe as the hardest boss, I think, of the season. This boss was absolutely a monster in high keys. Maybe that won't be the case when it goes live, but this guy was dangerous. First of all, permanently, he's pulsing damage. Like, he just always does damage to your group all the time. He'll put out orbs. I believe there's 10 of them around the room, so everybody needs to soak 2 on average. The orbs give you a damage and healing buff, so as a healer, you still kind of want to soak them. However, they also give you a massive dot, and both of those things stack. And so once you take the orbs, this is essentially the pop healing CDs moment of the fight when people have the debuff. The amount of damage that you're actually taking is crazy. Like, you can see Terrathal with 5 stacks. I'm sure he's like pressing barrier and shit here, but I am like absolutely blasting healing to try and keep him alive. And this happens pretty quickly. It's like every 30 or 45 seconds, it feels like there's a set of orbs. And maybe it's 45, I think. Yeah, so every time he does this, he'll do this awaken and he'll spawn flowers and then he'll spawn orbs. And every time, like, as people start soaking orbs, the damage starts ramping up. But you can see the health bars even without any mechanics going on. Like, the amount of pulsing damage this guy does is crazy. I'm pretty sure this is the highest HPS fight and the most healing required. You do get the healing orb, like the buff or whatever, but it's not like, it doesn't make a huge difference. But as a healer, you kind of do want to get it at least like 1 orb. Like, usually what I do as a healer is I force grab 1 and then I'll just wait and see. A DPS probably does not want more than 2. If you take more than 2 as a DPS, you better have like a damn strong defensive, like not even something small. Like, you better have like, you know, astral shift or, you know, mirrors plus both of your barriers or something as mage. I mean, mirrors isn't even that good because it's not a DR, but you get my point. And yeah, this is just constant AoE damage, orbs over and over again. The tank is doing tank stuff, but we don't care about that because we're doing a healer guide. And yeah, this is that boss. This is definitely the hardest dungeon. If you make it through this one, you are gaming. And we actually timed a key. I think this might be the first key that we actually timed in our VOD review, which is cool. We did it. Ignore my talents. All right, one more dungeon left. King's Rest, the difficulty has gone down quite a bit since BFA. However, in reviewing footage, trying to find a run where we did a full King's Rest dungeon, I had a lot of difficulties finding it. I think it was just a coincidence and a factor of people just don't like this dungeon, but maybe this dungeon is more difficult than I give it credit for. But I actually had to go very far back to my Mistweaver footage to find this dungeon. This is when everyone was playing the Mastery build, I believe. So these mobs fear, and now that everyone plays Alliance, nobody has Blood Elf to fear these. Before you used to just like rogue invis in and then Felf. Now you can't do that. There are a lot of random tools. I'm pretty sure Holy Pally might have like a random tool to do it with like something undead. You can also just CC these mobs. Notice they have a timer. So for like something like Landslide, for example, or Mass Entanglement, you can just CC all of these guys if you get up here quick enough and then just run by them. All right, so these golems, I believe the way they work is they do a small amount of AoE damage every time they hit the tank. And they also have it in like a power-up ability where they either hit harder or attack faster. I think it's just attack speed. So these are guys that you need to heal. Later on in PTR, we were trying to pull these into the next room, but you may see Pugs just do all of these at once. A little bit of stuff has changed since this footage in the dungeon. I'll try and point it out when I remember it, but this was when it was required to run 100% of the dungeon for count. But yeah, these guys just require pretty constant healing. Okay, so this room may look familiar if you've done this in the past BFA. However, this has been changed a lot. These Shadowborn guys, as we know from dungeons, they have a yellow nameplate and they're big, so they probably do unavoidable damage now. Also, the Hexer, I believe, is similar. It has single target casts and AoE. Pulling two champions can be dangerous. Pulling two champions or one with the golems in the hallway is fine, but pulling two champions and pulling the golems is like very, very, very dangerous. Okay, so Evade actually mentioned this to me, and I found this to be a helpful tip if it's hard to pay attention in this pull. These swirlies start whenever the AoE damage is about to happen. So this Shadow Whirl spell or whatever, it puts out a bunch of swirlies that it uses Shadow Whirl, and then this is the AoE damage. So as soon as you see swirlies, then be ready for damage to hit. Okay, so like bam, swirlies are out, then the damage, and now see there's another set, so like okay, now there's going to be more AoE damage. Now this was like in the first days that the dungeon came out, so I'm going to be like playing very, very badly according to what you should be playing in an 18. But Mistweaver was just OP enough that you could just press Rising Sun Kick over and over with a bunch of mastery and it worked. These guys have it in Enrage. I don't actually know what soothing them matters. I know you can soothe them, but I don't even know what the Enrage does. I don't remember ever having a tank problem where the tanks couldn't live. The difficult part of this pull was always the AoE damage from the Shadowborn guys and the Hexer cast going off. So this is something that hopefully is satisfying to people who didn't play these older expansions. If you feel like these dungeons coming back give people an advantage, I think that almost all of King's Rest and Temple has been completely reworked. Those are almost completely new dungeons with new mobs and new bosses, so I wouldn't really be worried about not knowing anything, because even as someone who was like a BFA expert, I went into these bosses and I had no idea what the hell was going on. Okay, so this boss. This Spit Gold targets two people with a debuff. The debuff I would describe as medium. You can't avoid it, but it does some damage. At the end, it drops a puddle. It's not super important of your puddle placement because these go away. However, you want them generally to be coming from the same area because they spawn adds and you want to be able to AoE them. After each Spit Gold debuff is this Serpentine Gust. This is the AoE damage event where you want to be using your cooldowns. I would also describe this damage as medium. You need to send something and do some amount of healing during it, but you can see even with just like pressing random buttons, it seemed to work. And then honestly, that's like the whole fight. That is literally the whole fight. It'll just do two debuffs, AoE, two debuffs, AoE, over and over and over. Every once in a while, it will turn all of the puddles into adds that will go into the boss, but the adds are very, very slow. You have the whole room to kite. You have tons of CC. I don't think an add went into the boss one time when I was doing this in PTR, but also if you're playing with zoo animals and LFG, this may be more important than I'm giving it credit for. All right. Onto this room. I'll be honest, a lot of the stuff in this room felt like really, really undertuned and then it didn't do much. This was the most notable pack that you need to consider. Okay, so this mob has 2 different abilities. The first one is Mortal Bleed. Okay, I don't know exactly what's doing it, if it's just Mortal Bleed or if it's the ads or what, but essentially this pack puts out a lot of bleeds, okay? And then this guy uses Blood Drain, and Blood Drain hits whoever is bleeding very, very hard. So essentially you want to try and remove all of the bleeds that you can, and anyone who has a bleed is in danger. If you have 1 bleed, you can like probably live. If you have 2 bleeds, you 100% need a major defensive, and like you may even still die through that. So like, for example, right now, this guy is the person in danger and he's about to take giga damage. You see how I put a cocoon on him because I'm like, and the cocoon's already gone. You see how much damage that guy took? Like I put a cocoon for his entire health bar and it's already gone within like 2 seconds. Okay, next pack. This pack doesn't really do anything. It just does like random damage as a healer. Honestly, don't even worry about it. This pack is very easy as well. The raptor just jumps around. You have to make sure that you don't get hit by the raptor. An important thing about raptors and these frontal guys in this season is there is a screen effect if you're in the area. So watch my screen here when this raptor jumps. If you're in the area of like one of these frontal raptor jump things, you get a screen effect on your screen. So see how there's like this red shit everywhere? If you see this, this means you're in a frontal jumpy guy thing and you need to get out. You still need to pay attention to the raptor because you need to know where to go to get out, but that is an important thing that is common in a couple of the dungeons. All right, this guy is mega super demon guy. He literally just does this one ability over and over again, slams your party for a bunch of damage and makes a huge puddle. And he has a shit ton of health and is very, very annoying. Yeah, we were finding ways to skip him on PTR with like Wormstone and Shadow Meld and stuff, but probably not something you'll be skipping in Pugs. And your tank. So, all right, this is my big tank quarry or quarrel of PTR is every tank wanted to like chain and do demonic shit in here, but this mob does so much damage you just cannot combine it with anything other than slimes unless you have like a very coordinated strategy. And every tank will do this where they'll just run forward while the party is taking infinite AoE damage. I mean, there I just up because I stood in a puddle and I didn't know what was going on, but basically every run goes south here. Your tank will like pull shit into here and it'll be so annoying. Okay, so these mobs are important to know how they work. First, each one of these guys spawns with 2 of these mummies that have a very tough cast that puts disease on your whole party if they go off. So I know as a DPS, well, this is for healers, but DPS are salivating at the mouth because they see all of these slimes that they get to pat on, and they're not focusing and getting ready to kick these, right? So be ready to stop these initially or to have some sort of counter for the disease that goes off. So that's important. This construct will entomb a random player. The important thing is that when you get entombed, you are always put in the tomb that is closest to you. So for example, the entomb targets Billy, who is the mage who's standing here. He will go in this tomb 100% because that is the closest tomb. And so in theory, as soon as he starts casting entomb, I can start running to this right away and just pre-clicking it. Now I'm adult, so I just run into the wall, but I could have opened that a lot faster, I think. Also, while this is happening, after he casts Entomb and while they're stuck, this guy pulses damage. This normally shouldn't be a scary damage event. Like, you should just be able to click him out in 1 or 2 seconds. But here's what will happen. Your tank will do very strange stuff and you will take infinite AoE damage. For example, your tank will tank the guy over here, or people will be standing over here and they will get entombed on the other side. So you can see I'm like waiting for the right. Well, actually he invises it or something and we kill it in time, but you could ping your tomb. I mean, all you literally need to do is hit the extra action button and you know what tomb they're going into anyway. Like, you can ping the tomb, but like, who cares, you know? It's easy to find out what tomb. These slimes used to do damage when they blow up. They used to do damage when they died. Now they just put swirlies. They don't do any damage. Yeah, so just be ready to open the guy right away because your tank is going to do some really weird stuff in here, and then you need to know which tomb their person is going into and open them quick enough because the pulsing damage that the guy does is pretty big. Also, there's this embalm cast. I don't know what's going on here. I feel like the other guy wasn't doing this. This room has gotten changed a little bit, and I'm not quite sure exactly how everything works. Like I said, we didn't do, maybe it has to do with pulling the boss. I don't know. Okay, this boss is quite easy, very, very easy. He has a spell called Drain Fluids. It's like a big single target hit. I thought you could feint it, but you could, apparently you can't. You can invis or shadow meld it or whatever. That's why I wasn't pressing any abilities. It has a area denial thing. You just take that out. You know you're targeted. It's very easy. Then he spawns ads and does AoE damage. He has a little bit of AoE damage that he does, but honestly, it's all very chill. I don't even think there are any times that you directly need to like use healing cooldowns or whatever. No really scary overlaps. Just make sure you continuously keep people topped because he does like random AoE abilities. But the only thing to note is that on the other constructs, I mentioned that he always puts you in the tomb that you're closest to. That is not true with this entomb. That is only true with the other mini bosses. This entomb is completely random. So in my opinion, as a healer, the way that you should do this boss is your team tanks it closer to one side. It always targets a DPS, and then you run to the other side. I left a little bit late, and I got unlucky because it was a very far tomb. But if I could have started running over there ahead of time and been ready to click that instantly. And that's just for damage. It's not like a huge bad thing if you don't open them right away. Eventually, I think he starts spawning mummies or whatever if you don't open them, but you'd have to be like really not trying to not open somebody then. And that's it. That's the whole boss. Home stretch. This area has no AoE damage, but a lot of random single target stuff. There are these frost shocks that are unavoidable instant cast. There are the bleeds that are unavoidable instants, and there are bolts that may go off, and there are hexes that people are trying to kick to allow the bolts to go off. The bleeds can stack. You notice there are 2 bleeds on my warrior there, so they need a lot of healing. The annoying thing about these pack are these shamans that spawn these healing tide totems. You can't kill them yourself as a healer, but do your best to try and hit them because the healing tide totems heal the mobs for a shit ton. They like instantly tick when they go off. So focus the shamans and kill the shamans even as a healer. Okay, so now there's a brute. The brute surprisingly does not do AoE damage. You would think that he would, given how every single other pack in the entire season has gone, but the brute does not do AoE damage. The one thing he does do is this really big area denial, and keep in mind there are raptors jumping around and frost shocks and stuff. Even though the frost shock this is only a slow, by the way, it's only a movement slow. It's not like a damage down or attack speed or anything. But don't be afraid to dispel it because, you know, people want to be able to move around and dodge, but it's not a high priority to dispel. And yeah, for the most part, this is just all random damage events, no AoE, nothing you got to worry about. This is all the same guys, raptors and bleeds and whatnot. This boss is also quite easy to heal. Maybe it might get difficult later, but a lot of this stuff has been toned down. This boss puts a bleed on somebody. The bleed can be removed by things like Cauterize or Dwarf. And the boss usually only gets like 2 bleeds off. So it's not really that scary. Just like doing healing to the person, stop the bleed. It's definitely not a like, oh, this is free. Like the bleed hurts, but there's just nothing going on in the fight really except for dodging. So healing them is quite easy. Then the next guy in the council is the charge boss. The charge actually does a pretty decent hit of damage, and this is a good idea to try and use the healing CD on these charges when you can. In BFA, you could do tricks with the charge, like jumping off the edge when it was about to go off, and then like transcending or whatever back on. That is not a thing anymore. If you try and jump off the edge with one, you will blow up. Do not do that. They did not like that as a change. You can also shadow meld the charge. Notice there I was targeted and I shadow melded it, so it just didn't even go off. So meld very, very, very good in this dungeon, but also so is Dwarf for the bleeds. And that's it. That's that guy, just healing CD on the charges when you have one. This is the Omega mental capacity guy. He'll put down a bunch of totems and you just have to like pay attention to all this becomes chaotic and has a bunch of shit that you have to dodge. You'll see it here. So he spawns 3 totems. There used to be 4. One is a torrent totem. This is the least important one that I rolled to, actually. This just puts swirlies everywhere. There's an explosive totem that blows up and must be killed. If you're pugging in lower keys, like farming gear or whatever, you probably could use your shield trinket or whatever to power through this explosive totem if your team's stupid. So be ready in case if your team doesn't kill the explosive totem to like press a defensive if you're playing with zoo animals. The hardest part of the fight is right here. So you notice we're scrambling to get the totems, but this soak targets somebody. So you have to be ready to do all the dodges and sort of congregate in an area. But again, remember, you can, I believe, feign and shadow meld and stuff this. So we do not get in the soak, and he just, oh, he turtles that one. I don't know if you can feign it, but you can turtle it. And that's it. That's the whole fight. It's basically just you start with the bleed guy, and then you go to the charge, and then you keep the axes, and then you keep the charge, and then you have to deal with the totems. It's always this order now. You just do that. This guy's quite easy. All right, Shadow of Zool. This is very different from how it used to be in BFA. This guy used to hit the shit out of your tank. He no longer does that. He spawns 2 puddles that you have to soak. If you do not soak, they pulse and blow up everybody. If you're in the puddle, it blows you up and it hurts you. If nobody soaks, it blows up everybody. So you want to make sure there's 2 people in there. Then 2 people get debuffs and they have to spread. So it's kind of like a figure out who soaks, figure out who spreads sort of deal, like more of a movement kind of a thing. If you do want to do healing, like this moment right here, where right as the circles spawn is like kind of what when you want to send any healing CDs, right? But honestly, we only took that damage because I walked out of it a second early. This guy is fairly easy. The one thing you want to look out for is a healer. I don't remember if these can target you, but these minion of Zools, it spawns 2 of them and they fixate a random person. If this fears you or somebody else, it's really nasty. Look out for people to get feared here to dispel them instantly, because a DPS might be tunneling in their cooldowns and then just get mega feared and then completely troll their damage. So if you can insta-dispel them, that's a feels good, man. And other than that, this guy is quite simple. He definitely does a decent chunk of damage in high keys, but he's nothing like the raid boss that he was last when he was last seen. All right, last boss. This guy is weird. They changed him quite a bit as well. You can see there's just swirlies everywhere in the room. There's kind of like different patterns that go off, and so you have to sort of deal with the patterns while you're dealing with like the raptor and these jumps. These jumps, you used to be able to like disjoint them, like blink while the boss was in midair or whatever, but I don't think that's a thing anymore. You just have to take it. I mean, you can see it's quite simple. You're just dodging and whatever. This is the high damage part of the fight. It is Gilded Destruction. This puts a debuff on your whole party along with an initial hit. So this is where you want to be using your major healing CDs. Whenever you see Gilded Destruction, you start popping damage. It lasts quite a bit, like 12 seconds, I think. So it's not just going to be like one small burst. It's going to look like it's not doing a lot, but it's going to actually take your party pretty hard. At some point, the Tazala jumps in the fight. A lot of teams I saw were saving their lust and their cooldowns for Tazala to jump in, because you can hit both at the same time and the damage transfers. But, you know, that doesn't really concern you that much as a healer. And other than that, I mean, that's the whole fight. Oh, yeah. So one thing to note about this, by the way, is so this is a pattern. So this right here is a pattern. So one thing you want to do as a range player is always be some amount of distance away from the boss, because one of the swirly things will always just be tons of swirlies everywhere around you, and you need to be far away from the boss, right? So what I try and do is tend to like be ahead of the boss, and then like as the tank is dragging, I keep backing up on mage. And then that way I, you know, if the swirlies spawn on me, I'm like here, for example. But if you're in here and you're a ranged player and you have to hardcast, it can be really, really bad for you. And oftentimes you use movement on other parts of the fight. As a Mistweaver, I'm just kicking the boss in the head the whole time, so there's not that much I can do. I just roll away, but yeah, that's it. Big CDs during Gilded Destruction, dodge, forehead. That's it. That's every dungeon. That actually didn't take as long as I thought it would. At first I was thinking like, oh god, is this going to take all day? Go to work, class. You guys have your homework now. Time dungeons.